Colombo due to the highway which runs around 10 kilometers away from the campus. The campus is located at Vavala, Horana in the Kaluthur district on the land and buildings donated by late Mr. Wilmot A. Pereira, an eminent public personality and a well-known philanthropist. Japanese Reverend Jian Koke has immensely contributed to improve the campus with physical resources and architectural design and create a splendid environment as a center of excellence in cultural and aesthetic studies. With the vision of striving to be a globally recognized campus in generating, transforming and transmitting knowledge, Sri Palee campus commenced its activities with the establishment of two faculties, namely Faculty of Mass Media and Faculty of Performing Arts in 1999. Currently, three departments, namely Departments of Mass Media, Computer Studies and Languages, are functioning under the Faculty of Mass Media. The Department of Mass Media offers innovative courses which suits to the media art and media industry with the specialization of print media, media studies, television studies and radio studies. The Department of Languages and Computer Studies, established officially in May 2015, offer computer studies and language courses to all undergraduates as service courses. The Department of Performing Arts, with the vision of creating a space for undergraduates to understand the society realistically and rationally and creating it aesthetically, offers a 4-year unique special degree program with a specialization of film studies, art and design, drama and theatre, dance and music. Studying different disciplines in mass media and performing arts assist the undergraduates to face the challenges of keeping pace with the latest trends of technology. It aims to prepare students for work in mass media and arts related industries and train them to critically analyze the ways in which the media and arts reflect, represent and influence the world. The print media unit and the audiovisual unit functioning under the Department of Mass Media offer the practical knowledge required for undergraduates. The one and only campus radio in Sri Lanka, established as a pioneering new program of activity, reaches out various communities of interest and allows undergraduates to enhance their practical skills in broadcasting while experimenting the integration with web-based forms of radio broadcasting, podcasting and FM broadcasting. The students engaging in the fields of media and performing arts to make the arts their life's work are guided by the faculty who are themselves deeply involved in the creative processes in the fields of mass media and performing arts. As students pursue their artistic and media training, they are encouraged to explore an array of interdisciplinary and multidisciplinary academic subjects. The Center for Media Research of Sri Palee campus, with the vision of fostering an outstanding research culture and generating new knowledge through mass media and liberal arts research, constantly endeavors to develop outstanding research skills among the academic community, disseminate knowledge, and provides a space for them to work together and interact with the local and international researchers within their academic disciplines. The academic staff of high caliber at the campus are specialized in various disciplines with expertise in both theoretical and practical knowledge in their specialized fields and contribute to the rich academic and social culture of the campus. The campus provides its community with recreational facilities and other services through experience of enjoyment, physical fitness, and increased self-confidence through opportunities for togetherness. The library of the Sri Palee campus that possesses up-to-date materials, books and other resources in the fields of mass media and performing arts supports the campus vision to discover, preserve and disseminate knowledge and contributes to information access and scholarly communication to both staff and students in respective disciplines. Sri Palee campus gives a rich and influential context where self-directed learning is encouraged through assignments which foster discovery of knowledge, scholarly and creative productions, and collaborative projects. The academic programs and all other services of Sri Palee campus are designed to enrich the undergraduate experience in a rigorous academic environment. Obviously, with all these new experiences, life will be filled with an intellectual and personal growth among its graduates at the Sri Palee campus. The University of Colombo is located in the heart of Colombo, the capital city of Sri Lanka, and deriving its heritage from the Ceylon Medical School and the Ceylon University College, established in 1870 and 1921 respectively. It strives to maintain academic excellence in all areas of study. Today, the University of Colombo, with a proud history of over 142 years, has a multicultural, multi-ethnic student and staff population, fostering social harmony, cultural diversity, unity, and equal opportunity. At present, University of Colombo has gained international recognition as it is ranked 8th in South Asia and number 1 in Sri Lanka. Sri Palee campus, affiliated to the University of Colombo, is located in a place that is considered as the hub of education in the recent past. It has been a center for many schools of arts, crafts, and sciences, and a center for aesthetic studies for some centuries, emulating the Shanti Niketana. It is ideally located in a mountainous area, an isolated place with no disturbance from neighborhood and with scenic beauty, which offers a conducive environment to engage in any kind of intellectual activity. There is easy access from the campus to the metropolitan city, Colombo, due to the highway which runs around 10 kilometers away from the campus. The campus is located at Vavala, Horana in the Kalutara district on the land and buildings donated by late Mr. Vilmot A. Pereira, an eminent public personality and a well-known philanthropist. Japanese Reverend Jian Koke has immensely contributed to improve the campus with physical resources and architectural design and create a splendid environment as a center of excellence in cultural and aesthetic studies. With the vision of striving to be a well-known, recognized campus in generating, transforming, and transmitting knowledge, Sri Palee campus commenced its activities with the establishment of 2 faculties, namely Faculty of Mass Media and Faculty of Performing Arts in 1999. Currently, 3 departments, namely Departments of Mass Media, Computer Studies, and Languages, are functioning under the Faculty of Mass Media. The Department of Mass Media offers innovative courses which suits to the media art and media industry, with the specialization of print media, media studies, television studies, and radio studies. The Department of Languages and Computer Studies, established officially in May 2015, offer computer studies and language courses to all undergraduates as service courses. The Department of Performing Arts, with the vision of creating a space for undergraduates to understand the society realistically and rationally, and creating it aesthetically, offers a 4-year unique special degree program with a specialization of film studies, art and design, drama and theatre, dance and music. Studying different disciplines in mass media and performing arts assist the undergraduates to face the challenges of keeping pace with the latest trends of technology. It aims to prepare students for work in mass media and arts related industries and train them to critically analyze the ways in which the media and arts reflect, represent and influence the world. The print media unit and the audiovisual unit, functioning under the Department of Mass Media, offer the practical knowledge required for undergraduates. the one and only campus radio in Sri Lanka, established as a pioneering new program of activity, reaches out various communities of interest and allows undergraduates to enhance their practical skills in broadcasting while experimenting the integration with web-based forms of radio broadcasting, podcasting, and FM broadcasting. The students engaging in the fields of media and performing arts to make the arts their life's work are guided by the faculty who are themselves deeply involved in the creative processes in the fields of mass media and performing arts. As students pursue their artistic and media training, they are encouraged to explore an array of interdisciplinary and multidisciplinary academic subjects. The Center for Media Research of Sri Palee campus, with the vision of fostering an outstanding research culture and generating new knowledge through mass media and liberal arts research, constantly endeavors to develop outstanding research skills among the academic community, disseminate knowledge, and provides a space for them to work together and interact with the local and international researchers within their academic disciplines. The academic staff of high caliber at the campus are specialized in various disciplines with expertise in both theoretical and practical knowledge in their specialized fields and contribute to the rich academic and social culture of the campus. The campus provides its community with recreational facilities and other services through experience of enjoyment, physical fitness, and increased self-confidence through opportunities for togetherness. The library of the Sri Palee campus that possesses up-to-date materials, books, and other resources in the fields of mass media and performing arts supports the campus vision to discover, preserve, and disseminate knowledge and contributes to information access and scholarly communication to both staff and students in respective disciplines. Sri Palee campus gives a rich and influential context where self-directed learning is encouraged through assignments which foster discovery of knowledge, scholarly and creative productions, and collaborative projects. The academic programs and all other services of Sri Palee campus are designed to enrich the undergraduate experience in a rigorous academic environment. Obviously, with all these new experiences, life will be filled with an intellectual and personal growth among its graduates at the Sri Palee campus.
afternoon. This international webinar session is organized by the Department of Mass Media, Sri Palee campus, University of Colombo. I would like to invite Professor Ranjan Hettiarachchi to moderate this webinar and hand over to you, Professor. Professor, is you.
Thank you, Dr. Sugat. The organizer of today's webinar, Rector, Sri Palee Campus, Dr. Pratibha Mahanama, First Secretary to His Excellency, the Chinese Ambassador. Please excuse me for the unpardonable action when I pronounce Chinese names. Mr. Liu Yue, Professor Sheng Yangqiu, Professor G. D. Qiang, Dr. Kalinga Seneviratna, Dr. Raghuram, Dr. Rashmi. All heads of the departments, coordinator of the conference, Dr. Sugat Senarat, and distinguished guests, participants, and all colleagues. Good afternoon to all of you. Sri Palee campus of the University of Colombo, which was established with the blessings of Rabindranath Tagore, has become a pioneer in offering two unique 4-degree programs in the field of media studies and performing arts. Currently, Sri Palee campus consisted of 4 departments. Department of Languages offer language courses, and the Department of Computer Studies offer courses on computer literacy. The Department of Mass Media offers a 4-year special degree program in mass media with a specialization in 4 different fields, namely media studies, print media, television, and radio. The student enrolled as media specialized students are to undergo a 2-year compulsory education program in IT and English offered by the Department of Computer and Languages. Department of Performing Arts offers a special degree in performing arts with a specialization in dancing, drama, music, art, and film studies. With this brief introduction, I'd like to respectfully invite Dr. Pratibha Mahanama, the Sri Palee campus strong pillar of success and the forerunner of today's webinar, to offer the welcome address. Over to you, Rector.
Thank you, Professor Ranjan. I am very glad today and one of my happiest day today, because we are having this first ever international webinar, and this is very important today. Communication, gap of communication, miscommunication, and it has spread around the world. So today this is very important day because we are conducting this media literacy in the digital age, and also very important to highlight certain events which are happening in the world also. The speakers will come up with that. So it is my great pleasure to welcome the first secretary, always Economic and Commercial Office, Embassy of the Peoples of Republic of China in the Democratic Socialist Republic of Sri Lanka. Dear sir, we like actually in future to combine with us and do a lot of other programs. And also, this is very important, University of Communication China supporting us this, and we like to collaborate with you in future with a memorandum of understanding, and always we can work together. So this international seminar, all the staff of mass media, the one and only university in Sri Lanka, University of Colombo Sri Palee campus, offering a mass media degree in undergraduate as well as postgraduate, and we have proposed now MPhil and PhD in future. So I urge from University of China as University of Communication of China and the embassy to support us in our future event. This is real reconciliation. So all these lecturers are representing various ethnic groups. So Sri Palee campus, actually, we have come to one reconciliation center with this webinar, and also their idea. Supported us from Mr. Nadir. He's the one who put this concept to me. Sir, we will do a webinar with University of Communication China. I said, yes, Nadira, we will do it in future also. You have to keep in contact. So today, the seminar is very important. Thank you very much for me giving this opportunity. I wish you all the best, and time management also very important. We'll try to finish on time, and we started on time. We are finishing on time. Thank you very much. And also last, our Honorable Vice Chancellor Lankan Vijayaratna Madam really supported us for this event. And when I put the post and other things, yes, Pratibha, this type of things are very important for the university ranking up also. So I always remember our leadership given by Senior Professor Chandrika Vijayaratna for this program as well as in future programs. So I once again thanks our First Secretary participating in this seminar, and also University of China, Communication of China. This is a bridging link. So in future we will work together. I have been to Beijing in several times for Human Rights Commission meetings, and there I understood China. They took me to the Weibo building. It is where another social media communication. I think they will highlight all these things in this webinar. Thank you very much, and all the best for this. My wishes to this seminar. Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you so much, Dr. Pratibha Mahanama, our rector, for your inspiring words. Your words are a blessing to start this today's event. China has had a long relationship with Sri Lanka, dating back to the 4th century AD, when the Chinese monk Fahian paid a visit to the island. Friendship between China and Sri Lanka has a long history, and we have been heavily influenced by the Chinese cultural links. Following Sri Lanka's recognition of the People's Republic of China in January 1950s, relations with China were reviewed the 20th century. Today, the Sri Lankan social, cultural, economic, and political relationship with China has evolved into more strategic connections focused on infrastructure development and global connectivity. China has been and will continue to be an essential partner in Sri Lanka's economic development, as well as a trusted worldwide friend. Today, China provides us the most number of scholarships to undertake higher studies. It is with great honor I mentioned that many of our Sri Palee campus PhD holders are also from China. With this brief note of appreciation, I'm very delighted to invite today's guest of honor, Mr. Liu Yue, First Secretary, Economic and Commercial Office, Embassy of the Republic of China in the Democratic Socialist Republic of Sri Lanka. Over to you, sir.
Thank you. Dear Dr. Pratibha, Rector of Sri Palee Campus, University of Colombo, Dr. Sugas Mahinda Senarath, Senior Lecturer, Deputy Department of Mass Media, Sri Palee Campus, University of Colombo, dear professors from Communication University of China, and academics from Sri Lanka. It is my great pleasure to be invited by the organizer of this webinar, Sri Palee Campus, University of Colombo, to participate today's event, which is very meaningful for further academic exchanges and cooperation between China and Sri Lanka, as well as providing a communication platform for intercultural dialogue. China and Sri Lanka have exchanged and learned from each other since ancient times. And the common culture of our two countries has been transmitted through Buddhism for thousands of years. As early as in the 5th century, Chinese eminent monk Fahian came to Sri Lanka to obtain Buddhist scriptures. And in the 15th century, navigator Zheng He, he led his fleet and made 7 voyages to western seas and visited Ceylon 4 times. The signing of the Rice Rubber Agreement between China and Sri Lanka in 1952, and the synergy between the Belt and Road Initiative and the vistas of prosperity and splendor. All these demonstrate the long history of friendship between China and Sri Lanka. Guided by the principles of openness and inclusiveness, China has been actively engaged in cross-cultural exchanges with other countries to enhance mutual understanding as well as mutual trust and mutual learning between different civilizations and closer people-to-people exchanges. China and Sri Lanka, being both developing countries, have attached great importance to education. The educational level in Sri Lanka ranks high in South Asia. In recent years, the educational and the cultural exchanges between China and Sri Lanka have been further deepened. The two sides have exchanged students, and the Chinese government provides government scholarships to Sri Lanka every year. The Sri Lankan students who return home after their studies are working in various fields such as medicine, engineering, tourism, education, economic and trade, and they're playing a positive role in promoting the mutual exchanges and cooperation. The theme of this webinar is media literacy in a digital era. I think this theme is fully embodies innovative thinking and provides a good platform for exploring cooperation and exchanges between our two sides. In the field of new media, with the rapid development of new generation information technologies, a new digital era has been born, and the media industry is also undergoing profound changes in this digital era. Traditional media has been gradually replaced by the new media, and the mode of information transmission has evolved from a single channel to a multi-channel and high interactive modern communication. The new media era has brought profound changes to economic and social development, as well as changing people's way of thinking, behavior, and life. So how to improve people's capability to identify, use, and assess the information. That is how to improve the media literacy under the digital era. It has been a severe challenge for the media industry. In addition, I think all the governments should continue to strengthen the governance of network and the information security, strengthen the mainstream media's positive publicity, and effectively control online fake news, maintain the reliability and credibility of the news reports, so that could create a good network environment for the people, for the public. As one of the oldest university in Sri Lanka, Colombo University has a history of more than 100 years, and the Communication University of China is characteristic in the field of information communication. So it is highly hoped that today's webinar will open a new chapter for the academic and cultural exchanges between the universities and the scholars of our two countries, especially that between the University of Colombo and the Communication University of China. 2022 marks the 65th anniversary of the establishment of diplomatic ties between China and Sri Lanka, as well as the 70th anniversary of Rubber Rights Agreement. So I sincerely wish that the bilateral cooperation between our two sides in various fields, including the education and the media sector, would be further strengthened in the future. Finally, I wish today's event a great success, and I looking forward to hearing from the marvelous presentations delivered by the academics present today. Thank you all.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Ms. Liu Yue. Of course, your speech was so inspiring and it was so informative and thought-provoking. We highly acknowledge your participation to today's event and also for the best wishes offered to us to make the event success. Thank you so much. There have been 4 eras of media theory. The first era, mass society and mass culture, is characterized by urbanization and the penny press, which made profits by selling newspapers for 1 penny many of the average factory workers. This infuriated elites and forced them to accuse media for pandering to lower class tastes, fomenting political unrest and
Professor, I think you are muted. Sorry.
Professor, please switch on the mic.
Okay. Yes. Thank you so much. Thank you. I think you can hear me now.
Yes, sir.
Okay. There have been 4 eras of media theory. The first era, mass society and mass culture, is characterized by urbanization and the penny press, which made profits by selling newspaper for 1 penny to many of the average factory workers. This infuriated elites and forced them to accuse media of pandering to lower class tastes, fomenting political unrest and subverting important cultural norms. The second era of media theory, the development of a scientific perspective on mass communication, eventually led to the emergence of the limited effects perspective. This idea stemmed from the propaganda techniques used in Nazi Germany. Paul Rasafet, a German American, wanted to quantify social research methods in order to study political propaganda. Out of this grew limited effects perspective, which was the view of media as reinforcing existing social trends and strengthening rather than threatening to the status quo. The third era of media theory occurred when competing cultural perspectives challenged limited effects theory. After World War II, American influence was strong in Europe and the academics were challenging the cloud. Neo-Marxism emerged as a social theory, asserting that media enable dominant social elites to maintain their power. The current era of media theory focuses on meaning-making perspective. Framing theory, asserting that the people use expectations of the social world to make sense of the world, and the media literacy movement, calling for improvement in people's ability to access, analyze, evaluate, and communicate media messages are 2 examples of meaning-making theory. It is essential to have an understanding or literacy about the media that has a significant impact on the planet's life. We will end up living in jungle unless we realize the danger of misuse of this facility. The media is thriving, yet media literacy appears to be deficient. We anticipate that today's webinar will bridge the gap. We believe that our expertise contribution to the symposia is extraordinary and that your perspectives on the aforementioned issue will be extremely beneficial to the whole world and especially to the symposium audience. Today, in this webinar, I should express certain guidelines for today's webinar. Each panelist has a 20 minutes presentation window. A question and answer period will follow the talk. Audience members can, however, ask questions at any time during or after presentation. And the relevant panelists will respond. Please keep in mind that you can only send your questions in writing form during the panelist speaking time. Thank you. Today, we got 5 panelists to present. 1 panelist is from Australia, 2 from China, and 2 from Sri Lanka. To start with the presentation, I invite Dr. Kalinga Seneviratne to talk on myth of free media and fake news in the information age. To brief about Professor Kalinga, Dr. Kalinga Seneviratne is a Sri Lankan born journalist, podcaster, author, and an international communication analyst. He was the head of the research at the Asian Media Information and Communication Center, AMIC, in Singapore from 2005 to 2012. He has authored 2 books, Myth of Free Media and Fake News in the Post-Truth Era, and Countering MTV Influence on Indonesia and Malaysia, and has edited numerous other books on communication issues, such as Mindful Communication for Sustainable Development, Perspectives from Asia. He has been a prolific feature writer for news agencies and publications, especially in Asia, for the past 30 years. He has also taught at territory level in Australia, Singapore, Thailand, India, and Central Asia. He is a recipient of an UN Media Peace Award in 1987 for his work on Australian community radio.
I would like to thank Sri Palee University and particularly Dr. Sugat Senarat for inviting me to speak at this forum. It is important in the current global environment that South Asia and China come to know each other better without depending on the tainted lenses of the Western media. It is unfortunate that currently the Indian media is so hostile to China. Even worse, they are even worse than the Anglo-American media. If we are to have peace and prosperity in Asia, it is very important that India and China understand each other. If not being good friends, at least not be hostile to each other, as it seems to be today. Since I do not understand Mandarin, it is difficult for me to judge if the Indian media's xenophobia is being matched by the Chinese media in Indophobia. But let me get into the topic of my presentation, which is about the myth of free media and fake news. In my book on the topic published by Sage in 2020 called Myth of Free Media and Fake News in the Post-Truth Era, I argue that the free media is a myth and watchdog journalism does not exist in a world dominated by corporations, and that fake news is often a reflection of mainstream media's fear of being exposed for their bias by the social media. Today, when I hear about Russian forces attacking Ukraine's capital, my memories go back to 2003, when America and its NATO allies attacked Baghdad. Then it was called a liberation, not an invasion. But it is through trusted social media outlets that you could find out the conflict in Ukraine boiled over at a time when a pipeline that connects Germany to Russia called Nord Stream 2 was about to be opened. Washington sees the pipeline as a threat to its primacy in Europe and has tried to sabotage the project from at every turn. It would have turned Russia and Germany into allies in a win-win economic relationship. On the other hand, through China-led Shanghai Cooperation Organization, Russia and China have been building an alternative global payment system, basically alternative financial system. And India, which is also a member of this organization, is quite an enthusiastic partner in this venture. Recently, Iran has applied to join the organization, and other Middle Eastern countries like Saudi Arabia and Qatar have become dialogue partners. I think Sri Lanka is also a dialogue partner of this organization. If you are dependent on the Anglo-American media for news and information, you are unlikely to know about these developments. So my question is this self-proclaimed free media really free to give you news without cultural and political bias? With the rise of social media technology, the gatekeepers and the agenda-setting theories have been thrown out of the window today. In fact, I haven't spoken about it in classrooms for the last 5 years or so. Last year's Nobel Peace Prize winner, Filipino journalist Maria Ressa, said in a recent interview that journalists have now lost gatekeeping powers to tech companies. And the tech companies have taken the revenues, but they have abdicated responsibility for protecting the public sphere. For more than half a century, we have been flogging this watchdog theory of the free media, claiming that free media should hold the powerful to account, which in democracies meant the governments. It was normal practice for journalists to depend on leaks and whistleblowers to play that role from within government agencies. When I learned journalism in Sydney in the 1980s, our journalism lecturer said that you can use leaked documents from government officials to expose corruption or misuse of power within governments. And if someone asks you, where did you get the documents or the information from, you can say that it fell off the back of a truck and you will be protected by the law. But that is not the case in Australia today. In September 2019, Australian Federal Police raided the homes of a former intelligence official and a journalist of a national newspaper to find out if he had leaked classified documents to journalists. Within 24 hours, they also raided the national broadcaster ABC's newsrooms to seek more information on this leaked document, which led to reports about possible war crimes by Australian soldiers in Afghanistan. Today, WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange is languishing in a high security jail in Britain for practicing the principle of holding governments to account. Using leaked electronic documents from 2 US intelligence officials, he practiced the watchdog principle of journalism to its very core. The US government has spent years to find legal arguments to declare that he is not a journalist, and hence he could not be protected by the First Amendment in the US Constitution to protect free speech. Last year, when Ressa and Russian journalist Dmitry Muratov were jointly awarded the Nobel Peace Prize, it was the first time in 85 years that a journalist was given this award. The Norwegian Nobel Committee said that it was given for their efforts to safeguard freedom of expression which is a precondition for democracy and lasting peace. They added that the two of them have fought a courageous battle for freedom of expression in the Philippines and Russia. It is true, both of them have waged a courageous battle against their own governments. But these are regimes which are not subservient to the West. Reza's and Muratov's media outlets are allegedly to be heavily funded by Western donor agencies. And this is a reason why their governments have cracked down on them heavily, seeing their activities as a form of espionage and a security threat to the country. If the Norwegians were to give Julian Assange the award as well, it would have sent a powerful message to the world that the Western powers, and particularly the United States, need to be held accountable for their actions around the world that have led to war crimes and crimes against humanity, which WikiLeaks exposed. In an emotional and passionate Nobel Peace Prize acceptance speech in December, Reza warned us about what she calls the toxic sludge that's coursing through our information ecosystem, driven by American internet companies. She said we are standing on a rubble of a world and that has been transformed by hate and violence. And she further said that these American companies controlling our global information ecosystem are biased against facts and biased against journalists. She also pointed out another interesting trend coming from China, which was taken down by Facebook in September 2020. It was creating fake accounts using AI, artificial intelligence generated photos for the US elections. Now Reza claims that the Chinese are also helping to polish the image of the former Philippines dictator's son, Ferdinand Marcos Jr., who is the current frontrunner in the May 9th presidential elections in the Philippines. And also she says that China is also currently helping in the social media campaigning for President Duterte's daughter, Sarah, who is going for the vice presidency. Well, foreign interference in election campaigns is not something new. Americans and some Western governments have been doing it for decades. And Sri Lankans know very well how the US and some European countries funded and used local NGOs to manipulate the 2015 election campaign to get an outcome that was favorable to the West. I call these NGOs dollar-chasing democracy vendors. Today, human rights has been weaponized, and media is very much part of this process. The Nobel Peace Prize for Reza and Muratov, and not for Assange, could be seen in that context. The Asian media need to monitor closely an attempt by China to redefine human rights at the UN Human Rights Council in Geneva. China won a small victory at the UNHRC in July last year, when a resolution on the role of development in promoting and protecting human rights for the well-being of the entire population was adopted by 31 votes to 14, with even India voting for it, along with other Asian countries such as Indonesia, Philippines, Bangladesh, Nepal, and Sri Lanka. Voting against it were mainly European nations, plus South Korea and Japan. The resolution called upon the UNHRC to organize a regional seminar before the 2023 sessions to define the role of development in promoting human rights. It is in this process a new definition of democracy could be born, and the Asian media need to pay attention to it because the Western media would ignore it. Noam Chomsky has been credited with having coined the term manufacturing consent. And for over 3 decades, he has been arguing that the so-called free media is nothing but a factory that is turning out a manufactured product called freedom that does not match the meaning of the word. When I did research for my book in India, I interviewed a number of senior journalists and some retired ones, and they all said to me that the media in India is nothing but a public relations enterprise. I mean the news media. Indian novelist Arundhati Roy has pointed out that we live in an age of manufactured public opinion. This is remarkably visible in the way COVID-19 pandemic has been reported by the media worldwide, especially by the Anglo-American media. First, the Wuhan lockdowns were described as draconian, reflecting the authoritarian tendencies of the Chinese government and used as a propaganda tool against China, which created a fierce psychosis around the world about the virus. When the virus hit Europe and tougher lockdowns were imposed, these were reported as necessary measures to slow the spread of the virus. Just a few weeks before the first COVID-19 victims were identified in Wuhan, an exercise named Event 201 was held at Johns Hopkins Center for Health Security in Baltimore, in the United States, which simulated a novel coronavirus that passed from bats to pigs, and then to humans, and then worldwide through air travel. The exercise was funded by Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. Bill Gates, as we know today, is the biggest vaccine evangelist. And no one is questioning him about what made him fund such an exercise at such a time. Since Western pharmaceutical companies released COVID-19 vaccine in late 2020, what we have seen is journalism that could be described as vaccine consent reporting. There is no room for questioning its effectiveness, the safety, or testing procedures. These are labeled as conspiracy theories and shut out from the mainstream media and by the tech companies as well, like Facebook and Twitter. Those social media sites that is able to get through these censorship barriers are labeled as fake news. For more than a year, led by India and China, over 100 countries have applied to the World Trade Organization, WTO, to waive patents on COVID vaccines and testing equipments. Western countries, along with Japan, have opposed it, even though President Biden first supported it. When it was due to come up for a vote in late November last year, WTO quietly postponed the meeting, saying the delegates could not come to Geneva because of lockdowns there. The global media ignored this news and did not ask why a virtual meeting could not do it. If the free media is about getting the powerful to account for their actions, they should be asking companies like Pfizer how they can justify blocking such action when they receive billions, not millions, billions of dollars of public money for research to develop the vaccine, and is now making obscene profits from it, even driving some poor nations into a debt trap. I have seen in Australia for the past I have been in Australia for the past 2 years, and there's basically no coverage in the Australian media of the Russian, Chinese, and Indian vaccines. But Australia has quietly recognized the Chinese vaccine recently because they want the Chinese tourists and the students to come back because they're losing billions of dollars as a result of it. So it is so what we have seen is a classic example of Chomsky's manufacturing consent brand of news journalism. It is a tragedy of our times that the fake news hysteria is giving ammunition to authoritarian governments everywhere to tighten the screws on the media. Unfortunately, these authoritarian governments now also exist in the West. Today, we see in countries like France, Canada, the US, and Australia, large demonstrations by people who are opposed to lockdowns and vaccine mandates. The mainstream media has labeled them as conspiracy theorists and troublemakers threatening people's health. And their reporting has helped to manufacture consent for draconian measures to break up these demonstrations, such as when the Canadian PM Trudeau authorized brutal police tactics to break up truck drivers' protests recently and confiscate their vehicles, which for most of them is their sole means of a livelihood. In February this year, Canberra saw one of the biggest demonstrations in recent history where thousands of protesters almost stormed the Australian Parliament, like what happened on January 6th, 2 years ago in the US, in Washington. It included even airline pilots who have been laid off because of vaccine mandates, people who have lost their livelihoods because of last year's lockdowns, and a sprinkle of conservative Christians. Before I end, I would like to draw your attention to the coverage of China's Belt and Road Initiative, known as BRI, a project I have been deeply interested in because China is helping to build transport infrastructure to connect communities, people, and regions, rather than building roads and railways to connect mines and plantations to the ports like what European colonizers did in Asia. Last month, The Atlantic, an American magazine, writing under the heading "The Chinese Debt Trap is a Myth," argued that the Western media narrative wrongfully portrayed both China and the developing countries it deals with. It pointed out that the Hambantota Chinese debt trap narrative is a clear example of how a lie told thousands of times become a truth. In December last year, landlocked Laos opened their first railway. And this makes it possible for people and goods to ultimately go from China right across Southeast Asia to Singapore. When that happens, the right of navigation narrative on South China Sea would gradually dissipate. But Western media is again portraying this as a Chinese debt trap, ignoring the fact that already products have started to be transported both ways between China, Laos, and Thailand. China even trained hundreds of Laotians to operate the railways, like engine drivers, guards, signal operators, people like that. When the borders open, especially the Chinese border opens, it is going to lead to a huge tourism bonanza in the region. Coming back to Hambantota Port, it is high time Sri Lanka started talking about and act on the huge economic potential available in the Bay of Bengal area because of this port, and also the airport. In addition to a maritime service hub for the region, Hambantota could also be a base for a cruise industry, like what Singapore is for Southeast Asia. Hambantota could be, because there's potential in the Bay of Bengal for cruise tourism, which has not been explored so far. So I hope some Sri Lankan millionaires would invest in setting up some cruise industry out of Hambantota and take the example of Singapore for that. And also the airport, Palee Airport, could be the budget airline hub for South Asia. Also, Sri Lankans are educated enough to exploit these opportunities. And media needs to talk about it. Forget about these debt traps. If you want to be critical of the BRI, there are also areas other than debt traps the regional media can focus on, and they should. Singapore's Channel News Asia did a report a few years ago about how the BRI has woken up a sleepy coastal town of Sihanoukville in Cambodia through a highway, one of the BRI highways, with Chinese tourism to Cambodia booming at the time. But it is because some 21 casinos have been built by Chinese businesses there. And most local cafes and restaurants have been taken over and run by Chinese investors. Media in the region should rightly be critical of such development. In the 1980s and 1990s, the West, which had a monopoly in giving loans to developing countries, did set debt traps right across Asia and Africa, and used the IMF, the International Monetary Fund, to dictate to these countries their economic and foreign policies. These were called structural adjustment programs, which became a dreaded word in most of Africa and Asia. And I can remember doing a story from Sri Lanka for IPS News Agency in 1995 about how 11 rice farmers in Polonnaruwa committed suicide because the Chandrika Kumaratunga government has signed into a structural adjustment program with IMF and cut all farm subsidies. So debt traps were there in the 80s and 90s, and it was very much subject of discussion, not necessarily in the Western media, but by development experts. Some of you may remember. So to the international, especially the Anglo-American media, when the West gives loans, they report it as aid or promoting economic reforms when structural adjustment policies are forced upon these governments. But when China gives loans to developing countries, it is called setting debt traps. We need to look at BRI, another project China invest in, with an open mind, not through these contaminated lenses, Western lenses. If we are to repair what Maria Ressa calls the rubble of a world, we need to form media alliances of both traditional and social media, working in collaboration with people's organizations. Now, I'm not mentioning the word NGOs here, because NGOs, as I had mentioned earlier, have been tainted as dollar chasing democracy vendors. So I'm not referring to that type of people, people's organizations, but real grassroots people's organizations like farmers organizations and things like that, even unions. And we need to develop these collaborations between the media and these groups to build a better world, drawing on perspectives from the grassroots. Sometimes the media could also work in collaboration with governments, especially at local government levels. In doing so, we might as well throw away those textbooks that talks about free media and libertarian media function theories. It sounds good on paper. Unfortunately, it's a defunct theory today. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Kalinga Senivaratna. It was a very inspiring and provoking speech, and I think that there may be some questions, and we'll accept the questions only at the end of the presentations. So next presentations of today's webinar is to be done by Professor G.D. Qian. So he's to speak on communication research for a shared future, reflection from Asia. So 1 minute, please.
Okay. So hi. Thank you for the introduction. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. Cool.
So could you please get your share?
Yes, I already shared my screen.
Because now you have shared the screen.
Yes. Can you see my screen?
Yeah. I need to. Excuse me. I need to give you a demo, of course, explanation regarding your background and bio.
Okay. All right. Can I start, by the way? I'm sorry, there's a little noise in my earphone. Okay.
Okay, then Professor, you can start your presentation.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Thank you so much again for the invitation. It's very nice to have such a very intellectually awarding seminar on the internet in such a cozy afternoon here in Beijing. We are entering into the spring season, very nice weather and very nice sunlight. Okay, the topic for today's webinar is media literacy in the digital era. I think for us, as our colleagues already shared with us from Sri Lanka, we are not only to focus on the media literacy in general, but also some professional perspective, especially how to innovate, how to find a way for better communication or more inclusive, more global and more diverse communication scholarship in the post-COVID-19 era. So again, this background, I just would like to share some of my reflections about the importance of Asian perspective in the communication scholarship, especially in today's context. I think nowadays we are facing more and more challenges than before because of the intensified the geopolitics and also the uncertainty that emerged because of the pandemic and also some geopolitical conflicts. So, but I would like to draw attention to the history first. I think we have a lot of space to explore the possibilities for the contribution of communication scholars from China or from Sri Lanka, and also for the Asia in general, because everybody knows that Asia is such a big continent and it's hard to put together in the same framework, because the Eastern Asia and South Asia and Western Asia, Central Asia, they all have their different intellectual background and history. So so what I would like to share with you is some of my own kind of reflections as a Chinese communication scholar, and who we have some obligation to study not only Chinese communication practices and media transformation, but also the encounters between China and the world, and more international and global orientation. So in the next 20 minutes or less than 20 minutes, I would like to focus on two important issues regarding the very ambiguous position of Asian scholarship in the communication studies in general, especially from historical perspective. So I would like to highlight two dimensions. The first one is the Asian communication research, whether it is a field information or just epistemological orientation, reorientation, because we all know, as our colleagues already said, a lot of communication theories are imported from the West, and we are conducting this kind of similar research also in our own continent and in our respective countries. But whether this is a really local-based or indigenous communication theory as part of the global communication scholarship, or it is just a kind of epistemological reorientation we just put into Asian perspective. So I think we have a lot of space for debating whether we really have an Asian communication research paradigm. This is a question mark, at least in my mind. And the second is communication research for shared future. This is resonating with the institution that I'm working for. But I think it implies a lot of academic theoretical implications. So what is the kind of a shared future? What is the kind of a future community for the communication researchers within the Asian continent? So how would we work together? How we can possibly find a way to collaborate at different levels? It's not only ideas, not only ideals, but also what we can do together in a very concrete manner. So I propose three approaches, just in principle, like dialogical and transcultural and digital approaches. So so I did a little literature review as a researcher. As all of you, I think we need to lead our research on a very not very solid, but some basis for the previous studies. So so first of all, I would like to say the Asian communication research is the ongoing effort, which could be traced back to I did some you can correct me if I'm wrong, some literature review about how the scholars think about the history and also the trajectory of Asian communication research, which was proposed by some scholars, especially in the 1980s. According to Taiwan-based scholar, they said actually critical discussion of Asian communications theory began in the 1980s and fermented in the 1990s and in 20s. In 2000s, was enriched by the criticism of Eurocentrism. And also after that, we saw a very kind of steady increase of communication scholarship or contributions from Asian scholars across the globe. Okay, I mean, the Asian scholars is everywhere. I mean, everywhere, located in both the Asia and the non-Asian countries. So I think this is something we have to observe. It's not only whether we should have an Asian perspective in communication studies. It is already there because a lot of Asian scholars are working on their own countries' issues and also their own ways of demonstrating the understanding of globalization. So in recent years, Asian countries experienced large-scale media transformation, especially as developing countries. We have more changes in comparison with the developed world, and further integration into a dynamic, dialectical globalization process. So I think which deserve both foreign indigenous oriented academic innovations. So Asian perspective, I think by nature aims to theoretically respond to these changes. I mean, any theory has a very natural ties with the context where their analysis come from. So, but Asian perspective, on the one hand, is designed to respond to those kind of changes. We have to provide our theoretical interpretations about what really happened in Sri Lanka and also in China, with a very kind of international academic rhetoric. But also, on the other hand, it also campaigns the diversity and justice in global communication research. I think it has multiple dimensions with regard. Right. I think we can have dialogue now.
Professor is mute.
Okay, it's not automatically muted. Now you can hear me, right? Okay.
Yes, we can hear you now.
Okay, thank you. I will continue. I just did very little research and summarized three approaches in theorizing Asian communication research so far, based on the previous studies. So three kind of conceptual kind of point I would like to highlight. The first one is Asia is considered as a geographical segmentation, which means the assumption is we have a global theory or universal theory. Then now we can have Asian countries or Asian media system or Asian media practices or Asian social media, Asian digital era as a case for verifying those assumptions. This is a very popular theoretical approach for many kind of mainstream communication scholars. I found some researchers in the past 2 years, like agenda setting, third person effect, and also intercultural communication, which is, as our colleagues already mentioned, a very important field of research for communication researchers. So I think this is something really easy to understand because I think for a lot of researchers, as based on my own experiences encountering with them, I think many, I'm not going to say most, many of them come from the Western kind of academic background. So they have their very well developed theoretical paradigm, and when they come back to Asia, they try to utilize those theory in the Asian context. I think this is very true for us to contribute to the kind of so-called universal, the global communication scholarship, but from the Asian location. So this is something is more scientific, as our chair already said in the very beginning. This is the first approach to theorize Asian communication research, and the second is Asia is considered as the cultural other, which means it's not only a scientific kind of component of the today's universal communication theory, and mostly come from the West, but Asia is considered as the cultural other, which means it's different from the West, or even it's outside of the so-called the mainstream communication theory. For example, how to understand, how to interpret the impact of Confucius or Confucianism, especially in East Asian countries. So there are a lot of English publications which focus on the Confucius version of communication theory, especially at both levels. One is the philosophical, okay, it's totally different, physical analysis, and the second dimension is a very concrete, like interpersonal communication research. So I think this is something really important, especially to be supplementary and also to go beyond a kind of a Euro or Western-centric perspective. But the limitation is the Confucius version of communication scholarship. It's very hard to translate to the previous, what I said, the universal communication scholarship. It's just the other. Okay, it's different from the modern Western world. So I think this is something really difficult to elaborate, because yes, I'm from China. I can fully understand this tradition, but from other even Asian countries, I think we also struggle to make sense of the cultural diversity, especially beyond that scientific approach to contribute our communication scholarship. And also the Asia is considered as the place where the critics of Eurocentrism and the beauty of Asian centrism. This is a kind of a following corresponding binary logic or even dichotomy. Okay, we criticize a Western Eurocentrism or American centrism, but at the same time build another centrism which is based in Asia. So there was a lot of articles that I found in both English and Chinese languages in around 2010. I found a lot of studies try to not to overthrow, but try to criticize the Eurocentrism, and also try to highlight the Asian centrism. For example, some philosophical traditions and the religious, background, and also some kind of the practice-based analysis of how Asian people communicate collectively instead of individually, as in the West, in their daily lives. So I mean, this is something really popular. I think even today, some scholars or some voices also maintain this kind of standing point. But it also the scholars also recognize there are some limitations. For example, like the very metaphysical. There's many differences between Asian and or just in general Western communication theories in terms of their philosophical and also the intellectual traditions. But one of the key difference is the maybe the East Asian countries. They focus a lot on the metaphysical kind of or philosophical orientation in communication researches. But from the West or from other countries, they focus on the scientific, more concrete, more middle range kind of research orientations. I think this is something really hard to accommodate. Okay, I think those are based deeply rooted in the cultural tradition, thousands of years of traditions that shape people's understanding and also shape the scholars' way of theorizing communication practices in their respective countries. And the third one is that Asia is considered as something kind of beyond the previous two versions, as the possibility to go beyond the tensions between cultural specificity and the cultural generality, and move towards the concept of cultural I don't know how to pronounce commensurability, okay, which is proposed by that Taiwan-based Chinese scholar in 2010, which stresses similarity and equivalence and not commonality and uniformity. In my case, I think it's kind of a mutual understanding and also a hybridization in a way. It's not just a binary logic. So some Chinese scholars also mentioned that maybe we can use another concept to define this new stage of interaction between the Asian wisdom and the Western wisdom, which is the new Asianism. I think it's not only in media communication, academic discourse, but in other like philosophical and social sciences, discussions. So this kind of concept contributes to the understanding of both internal and external diversities, and to recognize at least the three phases of Asia, which consider Asia as a crossroad of different historical and intellectual traditions. For example, Asia itself is historical tradition from different civilizations and Western experiences or Western modernity. Okay, and also finally, based on the history, based on the Western modernity, Asia also enter its own way of modernization. So I think this is a very complicated Asian concept, which is the basis for understanding the future or for the future of kind of communication scholarship for Asian scholars, I guess, at least as an observer. The second point I want to make is about the future of communication research. I know it's hard because we come from quite different subfield of communication scholarship. I think as our chair and also our colleagues from Sri Lanka already shared with us, even in Sri Lanka, in China as well, we have a lot of scholars. In China, they have more than 1,000 universities who offer journalism and media communication scholarship, programs. Our university is the number one. We have been ranked number one for almost 10 years. But we know different individuals works in different, subfield or small field in their with their own research interest. But just in general, okay, just what I would like to say, just some general orientations, what we can do in general from a paradigm, from principles. So I propose three kind of approaches for the future communication studies for both sides and maybe more other countries as well. First of all, I think we need more dialogue. It's easy to think about dialogue, but it's hard to conduct dialogue. Because a lot of reasons like the language or the mode of thinking and religious and political system or something else. So it's really hard to conduct the real dialogue. I mean, the real dialogue means we have to really consider or respect each other and then try to understand each other. So this is something hard to conduct. But I mean, for the academic research in the future, I think we need to conduct more and more dialogical, interactions between each other. So this is a quantitative process, and finally we'll achieve a qualitative, a change. So we need to respect diversity and neutrality and pursue intersubjectivity. This is the concept, I think, mainly from the philosophy and anthropology. So it's not only from us or from self-centric perspective, but to think about others from others' perspective and to look at ourselves. So this is a real dialogical approach. I think for most of the communication scholars in the world, I mean, just in general, I think we are quite familiar with the context, with the history, with the society that we grew up and we studied for a long time. But if we go across different continents, a different cultural community, a different religious, beliefs, how we can possibly understand each other? This is always a big challenge for everyone, even as a professional communication researchers. And the second is the transcultural approach. This is quite different from like the intercultural and cross-cultural communication studies. I think as communication scholars, we all know that intercultural communication, cross-cultural communication has more than maybe 70 or 80 years old history after the Second World War, based on the Edward T. Howe and other scholars, linguistics, anthropologists. So it has a long history, but mainly focused on the comparisons between different cultural patterns. But transcultural communication matters more in today's world, especially in the post-COVID-19 concept. We need to go beyond our differences. The difference is important for understanding each other, but it's not the end. Okay, I think so. This is why I personally collaborate with some scholars in China and also in New Zealand. We work together to publish just one new journal called Journal of Transcultural Communication. We focus on the one hand, the differences. This is the classical research questions. But on the other hand, is how to possibly go beyond, transcend the comparison or comparative perspective to look at how we can really come up with some common language or common theory or common perspective to look at our society, which is increasingly mediated, increasingly digitized, and increasingly fragmented. So I think transcultural communication studies include the transcending of comparison and the reflect hegemony, okay, and also seek for, as that scholar already mentioned, kind of commerciality, okay. So I think this is something I think we still need to do. And finally, as I heard from the introduction of this workshop, this webinar, we are now entering into a digital era. No matter how we theorize it, but everybody agreed this is our reality in today or even in the future. So digital approach means a lot. It's not only a scientific, technical term. It's about everything. So so in the future, I think we need possibly focus more on the connectivity development. This is something key for the Asian countries. Yes, we have some developed countries, but the majority of this continent are still in the stage of developing ourselves. So an expression interaction with method using data network ethnography. I think in this new kind of space of academic exploration, I think we will find more and more commonalities between each other. Okay, I think we in the future we might develop together maybe not only digital scientific approaches but also digital humanitarian, digital social scientific approaches for working together. This is our common language, the technology platform. So I said, this is just my personal tentative argument. A digital Asia will be the foci of Asian communication research in the near future. No matter where we come from, no matter how big our digital divide is still over there, but the digital future will be the common future for all of us. But we need to also respect that different understanding of what is the digital future and how we can incorporate digital technology in our media and communication transformations. And finally, let me just call your attention to a very famous Chinese philosopher. His name is Wang Hui. He's based in the Tsinghua University in Beijing. He used to write an article in 2005, almost 17 years ago. The article is about, it's entitled Asia That Isn't the East. Okay, so I think in the end, I just want to highlight again the concept of Asia, which is the basis for our communication scholarship and also the identification of ourselves. So Asia used to be a kind of the other of the West, okay, as I said before. And how to evaluate Asia is also based on the criteria from the West. So, so Professor Wang said, a new idea of Asia, which is neither the beginning of the linear world history, nor its end, neither self-sufficient subject nor subordinating object, provides the opportunity to reconstruct the world history. So this corrective must also lead to a re-examination of the idea of Europe. In this case, our self-reflection about the concept of Asia and also the beginning point of our communication scholarship also contribute back or feedback to the concept of Europe or even the West in general to understand their contribution to the global communication or media scholarship. I think we need to have this kind of not only the kind of the responsibility, but also the capacity to do this. So the criticism, according to Professor Wang, of Eurocentrism should not seek to affirm or confirm Asian centrism, but rather to eliminate the self-centered, exclusivist, expansionist logic of dominance. I think even though those words were written about 50 years or 70 years ago, but we can see it still has a lot of relevance to today's world. So the question of Asia is not merely an Asian issue, but one of world history. So I borrowed this way of writing, of framing the sentence, the last sentence I want to share with you. The question of Asian communication research is not merely an Asian issue, but one of global communication scholarship. I think this is the responsibility we have to bear as communication scholars, no matter we from South Asia, from East Asia, from other parts of Asia. I think we all have this kind of common responsibility for a brighter future of our researchers. Thank you so much. That's all for my presentation. I look forward to your feedbacks and questions, comments.
Yes, thank you, Professor Du-Quang Ji. And it was a very thought-provoking and of course showing us a different angle or direction of research. And of course, nowadays many people are talking about that. And yes, of course, I was unable to give the description or the introduction of Professor. So I think I better to give the introduction to know who the person is, who the professor is for the audience. So Ji Du-Quang is a professor of political economy of media and international communication. He's the deputy dean of the Institute of Community with Shared Future at Communication University of China in Beijing. He has been serving as the vice chair of the international communication section of the International Association for Media and Communication Research since 2016, Program Council member of the Dialogue of Civilization Research Institute, Berlin since 2020, managing editor of the Journal of Transcultural Communication since 2021, commissioning editor of Global Media in China since 2016 and editorial board member of Annals of the International Communication Association since 2020. His research covers several interrelated fields, including media and digitization, political economy of communication, international communication, and intercultural communication. Recently, his research centers on the platformization of Chinese society driven by the complex power formation by internet giants, state agencies, and the public, as well as the change in dynamics of the international communication in the post-COVID-19 era. His publication can be found in Chinese Journal of Communication, Media, Culture, and Society, Jones, the Public, Global Media in China. He has authored the monograph Digitizing China, the Political Economy of China's Digital Switchover, two edited volumes entitled Communication and Global Power Shift and Anti-Corruption Communication, International Perspectives, and many book chapters such as the China chapter in the International History of Communication Studies, the China Center Television chapter in China's Media Go Global, the Ethics chapter in the Contemporary BRICS Journalism, Non-Western Media in Transition, and the China-Africa Communication chapter in China, the Global Media Landscape, the China chapter in Research in the Global Communication Order, Reshaping the Global Communication Order. He has been since 2010 the editor-in-chief of China Media Research, a leading online academic platform for Chinese media and communication studies. He was a visiting researcher at Simon Fraser University and City University of Hong Kong. Thank you so much for your expertise. Of course, I think all the audience got a very informative lecture from you. Thank you, Professor.
Thank you so much for your introduction. Yeah.
So our next presenter is Professor Shang Yang Qiu. She is going to present her paper on media literacy in the information age. Shang Yang Qiu is a professor of communication, Deputy Dean of Institute for the Community with a Shared Future at Communication, University of China, Beijing, China. She also serves as the Director of Africa Communication Research Center at CUC. She won her PhD at Renmin University of China, MA and BA at Communication University of China. She has dedicated much of her research to international communication, Africa, media literacy, and new media studies. She won the Special Award for Canadian Studies and was a visiting scholar at the University of New South Wales, Australia, and a visiting fellow at London School of Economics and Political Science, UK. She has written or edited 5 books and 30 academic articles and chapters. Her book include International Communication Planning, Understanding Media Literacy, Origins, Paradigms, and Approaches. She has participated in many forums and international seminars. She has over 10 funded projects such as Chinese National Image Study in Africa, the Chinese National Social Science Fund project since 2011 as a program director. She has been in charge of the International Master of International Communication program to developing countries at ACUC, an MA program taught in English sponsored by China Ministry of Commerce. Your expertise. Over to you to have your presentation.
Thank you very much, Professor Ranjam, and for your introduction. And it is my greatest pleasure to attend this conference. At the same time, I will thank Nadira and also Dr. Shugaf for the coordination to make this conference, this webinar possible. And also, I think I was highly inspired by the speech given by the rector Mahanama Hewa and about the his support and also his willingness to work with a Chinese university. And here, as the deputy dean of the Institute for Community with a Shared Future at my university, we also like to express our willingness to collaborate with the University of Columbus, not university, university there, and Columbus. And also, as you know, that our university is the top one university in China in the field of media and communication studies. So I think in the future we have a lot to share in common. Let me start my find my PowerPoint here. Sorry, let me share my. Okay, sorry, I have to. Sorry, give me a second. It's there. At the same time, let me get back. I think there's something wrong here. Can you see my slides now? Maybe no.
Yes.
You can see my slides now?
Yes, Professor.
Yes.
Okay, okay. Thank you very much. So yes, and also I appreciate the Chinese embassy to Sri Lanka, Miss Liu Yue also attend this conference and to support this webinar. And I think in the future, with the support of embassies from both sides, we can achieve more. So let me start my presentation now. Okay, and yeah, my presentation is focused on media literacy in the information age. And because I have been teaching media literacy in the past 15 years in my university, and also my I did my PhD research on media literacy in China, and which is also the first PhD thesis in China, which means that is in 15 years ago, 15 years ago, which means even media literacy was known in China not more than 20 years. So this is also something quite new, but which also developed very fast in China. I'm very happy that this program was also taught at my university to our international students. So today I like to share. I did a lot of slides. I like to go very quickly and to share more knowledge as much as possible. So first, I think even Professor Kalinga has already stressed the importance for news literacy against the fake news or disinformation. But as we know that media is closely connected with society, so I'm going to talk on media and society, and we can examine what is the media literacy and how to look at media literacy from the historical points of view, and what about media literacy education around the world, what happened, what the other country has been achieved, and also since in China media literacy has a new perspective, which is also can meet the argument of my colleague, Professor Ji Dejiang, for, media literacy, you can regard it was raised in the West, but in China, we have our new approach, which used for the government, for e-governance, and also for public administration. So this is something I like to share with you about with Chinese experience. And also, there's some sub-concept like news literacy or digital literacy, which is closely related to fake news, and the participatory culture and young people. So this is what I like to share with you today. And first of all, media and society, we can go very quickly. For example, in the school, I don't think nowadays in China, even in most of the Chinese, primary school or secondary school or even high school, media literacy was taught. But at the same time, we know that literacy was taught. So literacy is about reading and writing. And of course, media literacy is about how to read media and how to write media. So this is a very simple, but we know we are living in the media saturated world, and all those factors related to the to the media. For example, nowadays during the along with the COVID-19 pandemic, and there's infodemic, we were also harmed by those disinformation. At the same time, the conflicts between China and the US, there's so many misinformation or disinformation in between, and it's the same about the ongoing conflicts between Russia and Ukraine. I think most of us feel confused about what's really going on there. At the same time, we have so many social problems connected with the media. Parents worry about their children, about the digital parenting. How can they do the digital parenting? And our social values, our lifestyles, even our history are closely related to with the media. And at the same time, we see so many stereotypes as well. For example, this cartoon is about Mulan, which is a legendary figure in China. But as a Chinese, I would say Mulan presented by the Disney cartoon is just like maybe 20% is true. The story is true. The other 80%, even 90%, the story was created by Disneyland. So which means Chinese traditional culture was misconsumed by all the children's, even adults around the world through those cartoons. And so that's why we say we have to open and close our eyes and to rethink about those pop songs. Pop songs is more than just music, and advertising is more than just promoting products. It's also promoting, social values and consumerism. So soap operas is more than killing time. TV news is more than just getting information. It means a lot. It means there are so many ideological things behind. Online chanting is more than talking, killing time. So all of this means we need media literacy. So what is a media literacy? Media literacy, someone regarded as a kind of skills, but it is also sort of awareness. So media literacy, according to the most popular definition, it is the ability to access, analyze, evaluate, and create messages across a variety of contexts. So it composed of 4 parts. One is access. It related to digital, nowadays, for the digital era, it related to the digital divides and how to consume the online, content, about the skills, about the, the technology issues. But analyze, evaluate is also important for us to tell the facts from the, the misinformation, and also create messages. Every one of us in the digital era, we are creators of the media content. Not only, we're not only share the content, but we create. When so many people creating online messages, which means it's very hard to tell which is right, which is wrong. So that's why media literacy in the digital era all of a sudden became so important. So media literacy, they have several stages. For the first stage, it is about how to use that. It is about media empowerment of citizens. At the same time, it is about media diet. How to keep a balance. You cannot just be online. Maybe sometimes you need to hold a book and sit in the corner to enjoy reading the print media. At the same time, we say for the second stage, it is about analyzing the media content. And also for the third stage, we need to explore deeper issues, just like why, like Professor Kalinga mentioned, why in India there's so many, negative news against China. So there's a deep issues which need to be understood by the media consumers, and by asking who profits, who loses, and who decides. So So it is a very complicated issues, but unfortunately, most of the schools, most of the young people, and even most of the adults, the lack of those kind of awareness and knowledge, or the way to think deeply about the media and media production. So the third part is, let's see, is it media literacy something new? Let's look at the historical view of media literacy, and we'll see from the very early history that the oral language is sort of a media. If you regarded oral language is a media, which means media literacy, we need media literacy for, media literacy existed for many, many years. So which means who owns the media, who owns the power, and the information, and who might own the power, like those big men in the center, because they have a good memory, and they are the information holder. So for the literature culture, and also for the print communication, with more people start to read and write, which means literacy, the book literacy, the printing literacy is also essential to the social development. If you regarded a book as a media, which means media literacy has been existing for decades, for ages, yeah. But unfortunately, we are in the mass communication age, even in the digital age. But on the other side, it seems we have a lot of choices. We can consume so many media contents, but at the same time, we might feel we are less powerful. So those all about media literacy. But I have to stress there that media literacy is not only about media content, but it is also about the media form, or the media itself. That's why, Marshall McLuhan mentioned the medium is the message, which means the medium itself means a lot. So the fourth part I like to share with you is about media education, the concept, policy, and the frameworks. So what is a media education? But actually, media education is sometimes it is also called media literacy. So when the education is about media literacy, it is also called media education. So media education is different from the journalism or communication education, such as provided at your university or my university. It is media education. The concept was not was used just for media literacy education, actually. So it's not professional journalism education or communication education. And also media education is not distance education, long distance education by means of a TV or internet. So which means media education is a teaching about the media, not through the media. Okay, so this is a media education. So media education concerns with all these kinds of a medium. At the same time, what is the outcome of media education? Of course, it could be media literacy, but at the same time, media literacy also means we are empowering our young people to be fully empowered participants in the 21st century, in the digital era. So media education is not only about the to empower the individuals, but also it means a lot to the society, to the development. So media education aims to develop both critical understanding and active participation. So especially in the UK, media education closely related to the media study, trends, which means from the theoretical framework, they will mainly consider on the 4 or 5 perspective. That is media representation and media production, language, audience, which means when they teach the children, teach the young people on about media literacy, they like to to use those categories, those framework to carry out the teaching, and even about technology, of course. So, which means media education related almost all fields, all disciplines. media education is a very urgent. So I think that's why you like to run this webinar. But fortunately, UNESCO has got involved in media education or media literacy from the 1980s. So which means UNESCO is one of the key force to promote media literacy. But according to my knowledge, almost most of the Western countries, especially like almost all the European countries, some of the Asian countries, even Latin American countries, they have, I think, more than nearly 200 countries, they have promoted media literacy in one way or another. So those are the arguments from the UNESCO to stress the importance of media education. One is because of technological development. The other is economic development, faced by the commercialization of contemporary culture, and the public service lost the ground to the commercial media. So we need to, to empower the citizens, and also for the social development. I'm not going to focus on this, stress the importance. So we say who need a media literacy education? Who needs media education? Of course, the first social group is the children and young people, but at the same time, adults also needs media education. So media education is lifelong education. All the citizens, not only the media professionals, but all the citizens need media education, which means media education is aiming the whole society, not just media professionals. So because young people, they are the key consumers nowadays, and so they need media education urgently. Sorry. But at the same time, we know young people, they're also media wise. They need protection, but at the same time, they are media wise. So we know that young people are not that passive, media users, but they still need media education. At the same time, adults, as a parents, working force, digital immigrants, and the decision makers, they need media education, not only in the working place, but also at home. So that's why we talk so much nowadays on the digital parenting. So who can, help to do the media education? Those organizations could get involved in media education, such as formal schools, universities. Like in my university, we have started to teach media education, media literacy for more than 1 decade. And we have a master degree program on media literacy. At the same time, we held international media literacy conference every other year, and also like youth and community works, and those parents, churches, media producers, and even media regulatory bodies like Ofcom, like ACMA in the UK, or ACMA in the Australia. Those media regulatory bodies, they also get involved in media education in one way or another. Later on, I will give you some of the examples. So we need, co-work. And so media education in this way, it could be formal or informal. And for example, in the UK, media literacy was taught in the high school as a separate subject, which was entitled media studies. But at the same time, in other countries, media literacy was also taught in the language, history, music, all the other subjects as integrated courses. As you know that because of different media system or social system or political system, media literacy will have a different focus. So which means media literacy carried out, media education carried out in China, which might be very different from the UK and the US, because we have a different media environment. I think it might be a different version in Sri Lanka as well. Here I want to stress that media education or media literacy was raised and carried out in some of the European countries like UK and Norway. At the very beginning, it focused on protection, protect the young people from the negative media content or poor or negative influence. But at the same time, with the time going, and the media literacy now focus on the preparation or empowerment, not just focus on the negative side, but also focus on the positive side, especially in the digital age, how to empower the young people to participate in the internet space. And that is another focus of media education nowadays. So what about media education or media literacy movement around the world? Here you can see in the 2019, about 193 countries get involved. The Global Media and Information Media Literacy Week organized by the UNESCO. And here I want to stress that in the past, UNESCO used the term media literacy, but now they changed that from media literacy to media and information literacy. So that is called MEL. And the MEL was also largely used around the world nowadays. Okay, so if you visit the UNESCO website and you search media and information literacy, you will get a lot of sources. So UNESCO might be a very, very useful website for the countries to develop media literacy. And this is a map of a media literacy in some of the European countries. I just go very quickly about those countries they promote. Belarus, and those are the UK. UK is a leading country in promoting media literacy, but it is focused at the very beginning, focused on critical thinking, but now it focuses on the digital empowerment. And this is, Ofcom, the Office for Communication in the UK, highly promote media literacy. They organize media literacy conferences, and they do the whole country media literacy, survey, and to provide information for the other sectors to promote media literacy. And even BBC highly promote media literacy. One good example is they organized a BBC school report activities for many years to empower the young people to report their community news. I think in China, also in Sri Lanka, you might have similar activities. This is in Australia. I'm not going to focus on this. Australia is also a leading country, so they have the Media Center for Education. The Media Center for Education Research, and this organization, they publish books, journals, and for teachers to carry out media education. This is the last, media literacy conference in my university, and this is the book I wrote on media literacy. And this is in some other countries. And even, the US, they teaching media literacy against COVID-19, so against the infodemic. And those are the Media Literacy Week in Canada. Canada is also leading country, yeah, much advanced than even than the UK and than the US. So we go very quickly. Even in Russia, yeah. In Russia. There are some other concepts related to media literacy, like information literacy or digital literacy or new media literacy or ICT literacies. Those terms, there are a lot of similarities, but also differences. So different So this is digital literacy. And this is the teachers' curriculum books are published by the UNESCO to empower the teachers to teach media and information literacy. You can have the access at the UNESCO website. This is what BBC's a new program. It is called My World Media Literacy. So media literacy also could be used for, e-governance. We know e-governance is a must nowadays for the government to citizen and government to business, government to government. So we all of this need media literacy. We need, all the users for the e-governance, government officials. We need to empower themselves to be skillful and to use the internet or digital facilities to do the e-governance or even public administration. So even nowadays we are talking about smart city, and if the government officials or for those decision makers, they have very limited knowledge on the digital technology or lack of digital literacy, it's hard for them to make any decisions. So the next part is about media literacy for public administration. And this is something very new in China. I don't think the other countries, when they promote media literacy, they did the same. For most of the country, when they promote media literacy, they focus on the children or those, some, sub-social groups like old people. But now in China, why we are doing the same. At the same time, we are trying to promote media literacy for public administration, which means we trained a lot of media literacy. We train the government officials on their media literacy. So this is one of my presentation title on the media literacy training to Chinese government officials. From individual capacity building to public administration, which I presented as one of the UNESCO, media literacy conference. And even Chinese, President highly stressed the government officials, media literacy for them to understand the public concerns, the social problems, and to promote media convergence. And in China, there are so many training programs for short-term training programs to government officials was carried out. In my university, we have a center which is called Chinese National Media Literacy Training Center for Leadership. So we have carried out so many, terms of media literacy training programs. And the next one is about news literacy or fake news. So here we know there are so many fake news like disinformation, misinformation, or malinformation. So all of this related to media literacy. Let's watch. Just 1 minute. Okay, so this is to stress the importance of news literacy. And also in my university, we have a news literacy course towards our university students. And this is the on the UNESCO website, and they publish a handbook on journalism, fake news, and disinformation. This could be used among the journalists against the fake news, how to detect fake news. And the last part is about new media literacy and the public participatory culture. So new media literacy, which means related to media literacy, but they're also different. And nowadays we talk a lot about the participatory culture, especially with the large use of social media. So participatory culture is different from consumer culture, which means a culture in which public do not act as a consumer only, but also as a contributor or creator or even producer. So which means the more they participate, the more media, literate or media skills they needed. So that's why in the digital age, we need a media literacy or media information literacy. I think because in my university, we have several teachers that do media literacy research. And we also like to share our experience with our counterparts or friends in Sri Lanka. So this is all I like to share with you. And thank you very much. Okay. So I don't know, Professor Ranjam, I finished my presentation. Hello?
掉线了。Reconnect.
Professor Ranjan? I think Professor Lee is not, yeah?
Yeah, Professor Ranjan will contact soon because he's facing a little bit of a technical issue right now. So
Okay.
as soon as he contacts, so
All right.
yeah.
I'm very sorry because of the power cut and so many issues with the network connections. I got my connection disconnected. And our next presentation is to be made by Dr. S. Raguraman and Dr. MC Rasmin. And can you see my slides, please?
Yes.
Okay. So, Dr. S. Raghuram is a senior lecturer and head of the Department of Media Studies at the University of Jaffna. Earlier, he has served as the Dean at the Faculty of Communication and Business Studies and Acting Rector of Palee campus, Eastern University, Sri Lanka. Raghuram is a Commonwealth Fellow, obtained his PhD from Gandhigram Rural University, India, in the field of development communication and Masters in Journalism and Mass Communication. And he was the university rank holder and the gold medalist at Loyola College, affiliated to the University of Madras, India, for his outstanding academic performance in undergraduation, BSc in Visual Communication. Before entering into the academic life, he was a versatile journalist holding key positions in print, and electronic media nearly for 10 years. News editor of Esahantam, Tamil Daily, and Tinakthir Daily from Batikalo, executive producer at Maharaja Television, chief editor of Namathu Esenhadu, and editor of Yash Tinakural. Further, he was an IEC specialist in Asian Bank funded Northeast Coastal Community Development Project for a considerable period. In addition to the academic position, Raghuram is currently working as a consultant and a resource person in many areas of his specialization and holding membership at various national and regional level committees in media and communication with his participation in research and studies related to national development. Our joint presenter is Dr. MC Rasmin. He's a competent media development specialist with 15 years of extensive experience in designing, managing, and evaluating more than 25 media development initiatives with various local and international organizations. There has been a diverse of focus areas such as media freedom, digital journalism, mobile journalism, countering disinformation and media literacy, conflict-sensitive journalism, gender and media, peace building, media for gender equality, media policy reform, and community media. Dr. Rasmin completed his PhD in the year 2020 in India, MSc in Development Communication in 2011, University of Peradeniya. He also completed a master level program at the University of Oslo, Norway. In 2017, he joined IREX vision in Sri Lanka to provide leadership to the media development for Democratic Sri Lanka program as the Deputy Chief Party and the Senior Partnership Director, where he supported media industry on digital transformation, peace journalism, media policy reform, and media freedom. He has designed several successful journalism training and development initiatives covering the areas mentioned above. He's an accomplished media researcher, having produced more than 25 scientific studies, published book chapters, journal articles, conference papers, learning and training curricula, and reviews. Universities, over to you.
Yes, thank you, Professor Ranjan Hettiarachchi, for the introduction, and many thanks to the Sri Palee campus invited us to deliver our sharing on navigating information pollution as a part of this webinar. So here this is the high time to talk about the navigation information pollution, because we are severely affected by the information pollution, not only in Sri Lanka, but all over the world. So under the information pollution, the fact-checking is become as a major threat to us, major area to be considered and to be have a look on the very seriously on that matter. So here we are going to present our sharing on navigating information pollution as a special reference to the assessment on fact-checking in Sri Lanka. So when we go to that area, we have to have the landscape, the detailed landscape on what's going on in the country compared with international scenario. So that here, that one thing we should accept that there has not been a mapping exercise done in Sri Lanka about that how the media, news, and information ecosystems presently occupy that media consumption. There are that studies and researches carried out, notable studies carried out, but not recently. So that this is obligation to all of us to go further to get into touch with that what's going on in Sri Lanka with a relevant mapping exercise very soon. So we are expecting that. So we need to have a good collaboration all over the country to do that one. So when we talk about that ecosystem, the news, media, news and information ecosystem in Sri Lanka, we can't avoid that mainstream media. The mainstream media is largely play the vital role in Sri Lankan ecosystem, news and information ecosystem. And the thing actually that ownership, that when we talk about the ownership of the mainstream media is largely occupied by the very few hands, like politicians, that companies, corporate companies, as well as that the industry owners. So they are taking control over the mainstream media, so that their agenda, it's nonetheless reflected on their media outlet agenda. It's actually coordinated with that one. So ownership is become as a very big determinant factor in control the media, news and information ecosystem in Sri Lanka. Recently there was a research carried out by the Verite Research, and they found that the most of the media, nearly more than 95% of the Sri Lankan media, controlled by the very few people. And there is another important factor we observed, that one, that ownership play a monopoly role in the media, the functioning. So that not only that owners control or that occupy the single source of media outlets, but they have to have a lot of media outlets in their hands. Even they have television channels, newspapers, as well as that radio broadcasting stations. So these type of monopolies have become very popular in Sri Lanka, so that the mainstream media falls under the hands of very few. That is a big thing. 1 minute, I will share the screen again. I think are you able to see my screen?
Not really, Raghu.
Oh yeah, okay. Okay, is it okay now?
Yes.
Okay, so that the ownership actually becomes a major determinant information ecosystem in Sri Lanka. There is no that what you call public broadcasting system in Sri Lanka. Whatever we find a definition for the public broadcasting system, the public service media, we don't have that type of system in Sri Lanka. So that even in the last regime, some media activists take a role to play a major role to implement that public service media here in Sri Lanka, but it was not materialized. So that we are expecting to have the public service media, PSM, that should be here, because that if the ownership control all over the things, that these automatically that their ideologies and their agenda all are reflected in the mainstream media. We can't get the genuine news information sources from the mainstream media part. Then another part, there's a booming, that's emerging field, that is mobile phone industry. Here in Sri Lanka, we have the nearly 30.41 million mobile connections, according to the recent survey. Then when we take about that social media, the equivalent to 36.8% of the total population, they are becoming the consumers of the social media. So more than 40%, nearly 40% of the people, they are becoming that consumers of the social media. So when we rank these media consumption comparatively with the mainstream media as well as the social media, that early studies that indicated that mainstream media is actually played a major role. But nowadays, even after the Corona period, the social media becoming what you call unnegligible role to play to get the media consumption from the common people, the common man or grassroots people. So here when we talk about the social media, there are the several that actors. So not only the individuals, mostly when we are talking about the social media, we thought that the citizen, that common man play a major role on that, even that news sharing, news content creation and all. But nowadays we are able to see the several new actors in the scene, that political, religious, ideological, marketing people, and so on. The people now that find that the social media platform is very influential and become as an alternative to the mainstream media. Even that some of that mainstream media, they want to what you call expand their that media dissemination even through the social media networks. In Sri Lanka, we are able to see that one. And now the newspapers, they have their own YouTube channels, and they are very frequently maintaining that their Facebook pages. And not only that, even they move to the Twitter and all. So these type of things are happening. So that when we think about that, this is actually become as a very influential platform. So that the political parties, that religious people, the people who want to make that opinions, the ideological influences, marketing people, and the pressure groups, then all wants to play a role and get a space in the social media platform. Okay, so when we go to the next one, right, when we talk about that social media and its functioning here in that which actually get a major role in the ecosystem in Sri Lanka, there are the bombardment of news actually falls under the heads of that what you call that the thinking nerve center of the common man. The too much of news, everything has become news, because that each and every person, they have their own channel to expose themselves. Not only that themselves, even their news and information about their relatives or their villages or their what you call their institutions they belongs to them. So they want to share all those things immediately, so that they are not actually get the proper understanding about the news values. So since actually they feel that this is our priority, so this become as a news. So they want to share that all those things, what's happening in and around of them, they want to make it publicly disseminate that one through the social media platform. So what happening that ultimately that too much of news bombarded in the platform of social media, so that even some of the things are they're very personal, very what you call that the private matters. When they share all those things without what you call having a critical awareness about these the privacy matters and all, it's become news to others. So this is also another part actually that important things happening in the field of social media. So that is actually become as a flood of information. So each and every seconds, the people are bombarded by that this flood of information. Then another that important feature, we are able to see that one new development, news webcasting site, news online sites all around the country. So not only that major news or mainstream news media outlets, but also that people who are running the small news industries. So take example that individual groups also, they are very much interested to start and establish news webcasting sites for the various purposes, and various reasons are behind on that. Some of them are actually that what we see that earlier, that politically motivated. Some of them are that they want to become as a pressure groups, and some of them are want to become as what you call that the threatening even others. So this is a new kind of interventions happening in the Sri Lankan media industry. Some of the news that online news portals, they want to play a role to make a pressure even to the individuals. So by publishing then some type of news item regard to that particular person or individual, and ask them even ransom to remove that type of character assassination on their news platforms. So these are the things, actually unethical things also going around in the social media platform. So because that when we talk about that the pollution, we have to identify these aspects. These are the things are not neglectable things. Then we are able to see the politically motivated propaganda channels in social media. Even not only that election times, even that normal times also, politicians are very much interested to have their sponsor pages, and through the artificial intelligence, they want to make them reach to the public rather than get involved in the mainstream media, because the mainstream media, since they are functioning with a political motivation and bias to that different political parties, the politicians think that this is a better platform to reach the grassroots people according to their wish. So they are able to reach that grassroots level in different layers through the artificial intelligence and selecting their path as a sponsor pages. Then another very important aspect we are able to find out in the scenario, that is hundred of video blogs that not only for the news item, even for that carrying out the different aspects of the life and lifestyles of the public. Some of them are become very popular, and they have that thousands and thousands subscribers, and they are even that become as another way of what you call getting income. So that even in our university, that I can tell you that one example, that some of the students, they are unitely come together and start a video blog, that YouTube channel, and getting that more than 3 to 4 lakhs monthly income from that one. So these type of things are that happening in Sri Lanka. Even some of the very popular RJs, radio jockeys, leave their jobs and come to that these type of platforms and start to earn the money from there. So that these type of things are become as another the what you call that the platform to earn the money through, and make the media is the successful industry. Then we can see that as I said earlier, the sponsors news contents, even that Facebook like pages, we are able to see that one. And not only in that seasonal times, but also throughout that annum, we are able to see that one from the different the people. Then the citizen journalism is booming out. We are able to see that not only that sharing and publishing the contents, but also they become as reviewers of the news items. So that even in the Tamil scenario, there are the people, there are the individual people who become as a YouTube media content producers and all. They want to play another role as a reviewers, reviewing the news items, reviewing that international scenario, reviewing even that film appreciation. So that become, they want slowly they want to start their journey as a citizen journalist. Then another one, the meme culture. That is also another remarkable theme we are able to find in Sri Lankan the social media platform. Nowadays, whatever that government or that ruling party take actions regard to that, whatever that the different sectors, they can't simply escape from the eyes of the citizens. So they not only the mainstream media, but also the citizen, that normal, that people, they have the capacity to create that memes, and that they have a satire, the look on these type of activities of the ruling parties, as well as the different political and different religious parties. So these are the things happening in the Sri Lankan. And finally, I want to then highlight that one. So when we go into deep detail, these type of things, that what you call identify what is the media, what means that media, and what means that news and news values, and what means actually about the journalism. It's actually become as a very complicated one. So not only that we are taking that the role of journalist, now that people are taking the role, then try to perform the role of journalist. So that this is the new experience to the Sri Lankan media scenario, and that mainstream media, as well as the social media network and the citizens. So there are the different the platform we have to play the role of the journalist, so that who will play and who will actually take seriously consider about that ethical deliberations, who will follow that the news, information, values, all are become very questionable. But that we can't say these things are very negative, but there are the very positive sides also there. So we have to look on that one, and we have to neutrally, the what you call that, do a survey and get the real picture what's going on. So I think it's a high time to go for that. So I will hand over that the part of the presentation to Dr. MC Rasmin. He will do that, how this fact checking become as a very important aspect, and how that Sri Lankan scenario on fact checking existing presently. Over to you, Rasmin.
Thank you so much, Dr. Raghuram. Will it be possible for me to share the screen? Yeah, thank you so much. All right. Thank you so very much for offering me this opportunity to be part of this timely webinar. Before I move to my presentation, I also wanted to thank Dr. Kalinga for being here. I'm seeing him for an era, almost like after, I think, 10 years. And then before I jump in, I would briefly want to build upon 3 points. Number one, I mean, we extensively spoke about media literacy. I think it is the time for us to not to sort of try to define media literacy in terms of what it is, in terms of looking at media literacy from the perspective of who is the actual media literate citizen. I mean, with everything what we discussed, I'm also seeing, like, based on a couple of other theories and recent literatures, ability to understand. I think this is what was sort of very much stressed in the presentation of Dr. Kalinga also. One's ability to understand the bigger picture, not necessarily very narrowly the message that we have been sort of teaching for the last couple of decades, but also the system that generates a lot of myths and falsehoods in our daily life. That also means one's ability to understand the media, news, information ecosystem under he or she lives. And in addition to that one point, I would also want to add the ability of every individual to sort of evaluate their personal cognitive factor, the personal ability to sort of navigate the information pollution that Dr. Raghuram was explaining, in terms of sort of being carefully away from our own filter bubbles. This is very much in social media. Also, try to carefully understand our own confirmation bias. That can be political, ethnical, or in any other ways. Also, to have a clear mindset about who's our echo chambers, particularly in our digital media environment. Also, one thing that I've been always looking that is missing is like the entire discussion of media and information literacy is predominantly driven around news and information, and less so around creative industry. And we've been seeing in Sri Lanka for the last couple of years, at least during the period of pandemic, a lot of satiric memes. In addition to that, songs, dramas, mimicries, digital dramas, and some form of comedy stories, directly or indirectly discussing about various forms of news content that is generated either through mainstream media or various forms of web and social media platform. With that, coming back to my presentation, I should also want to be mindful about the time. I think we are almost running out of time. So let me be very brief in my slides to come in. So the main focus, as I understand, This presentation is not based on thoroughly done scientific study, but a series of formal deliberations with some people, those who are in the industry working for fact-checking services, those who are closely associated with fact-checking entities in Sri Lanka. So in that case, the major focus we are seeing is, as they claim, is to explore the truth, but not quite sure what kind of a truth it is. I mean, that would definitely require another level of a study. Looking at the fact-checking landscape, we have a number of entities. Half of them are at least, or two of them out of 5-6 are homegrown, citizen.lk, and then Fact Seekers by Sri Lanka Press Institute. And Fact Check Crescendo is an Indian company having their arm in Sri Lanka, and AFP Watchdog is a new fact-checking, locally driven entity. We also have Verity's factcheck.lk. Looking at their focus, I think Verity is having a sort of slightly different focus to concentrate on economic related data. All the other entities are sort of dealing with various range of information falsehood. And again, this needs a careful content analysis or analysis of a different sort to understand the diversity. And there are some occasional fact checkers, and I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about them, which is not going to add any merits for today's presentation. And interestingly, we are also seeing there is a fact-checking entity run by government. And this is quite an interesting addition. And I'm not personally saying like government cannot have a fact-checking entity. Of course, I mean, nothing would limit their ability to maintain a fact-checking entity. But qualitatively analyzing the government-sponsored fact-checking entity, most safer conclusion that we could draw is that the lack of diversity and lack of ability to sort of help the citizens in terms of creating the critical mindset. It is more of defending a false information in their view that are presented against government. Again, I am sort of not of the view that government cannot run a fact-checking service. And then coming back to the question of why fact-checking is so important, then I was fascinated by Verity's factcheck.lk site, and I went to the home page, and I did not sort of purposely select all these screenshots. Of course, some of the shots in the second page, but I went to the first page, and interestingly, except one political comment on economic development, all the other sort of comments or statements, quote, made by the politicians for various media organizations are either false or misleading. And they have a sort of blatant false also. I mean, in any way, these claims are sort of unprovable. And one thing that I recently had an opportunity to work with a couple of Canadian experts, those who are experts in verification. And it is interesting to note that they are mostly concentrating on helping the citizens, clarifying the large number of value claims made by the local politicians. And I think Verity is sort of doing that service to some extent. And looking at the nature of falsehood presented, I mean, it's varied, but I counted only limited number of content that are presented across those identified local fact-checking entities. Most of the contents are misleading, and some are, of course, clear falsehoods. And then looking at the methodology, most of the local fact-checking organizations, either they are based in Sri Lanka or homegrown entities, they have explained their methodology, code of conduct, and then a policy that is govern their operation in their platforms. But however, looking at the overall process of verifying the accuracy of information and news presented in mainstream media and social media, more or less almost all the fact-checking entities are following the same sort of a flow. And I discovered FactCheck Crescendo is having an interesting special tool to sort of follow deeply on the viral content. But in general, Google reverse image search is widely used to sort of verify fabricated images that are presented. In addition, almost every fact-checking organization entities are using InVid for video sort of verification. And I kind of cut short some of my slides. And then coming back to the challenges specific to Sri Lankan context, particularly the local fact-checking entities are facing. So one of the major points that we observed is that fact-checking is or cannot be considered as the only solution for the bigger problem that we've been discussing today. Fact-checking is of course, it can be considered as a mean to promote the necessity of being every individual sort of critical about or positively skeptical about the content that they receive every time. Other than that, fact-checking is sort of fact is checked to some extent, but what is missing, I'm not blaming the fact-checking entities, of course, the abilities, practicalities of those fact-checking entities to go beyond this is certainly limited. But from the perspective of empowering common masses with critical thinking, what is lacking there is sort of fact is explained, but the context is not. For example, there have been a lot of fake informations or content presented recently on certain business communities, ethnic communities, or targeting certain political parties. And most of the fact-checking entities are, of course, helping the citizen in terms of clarifying whether that is true or false. But there is lack of ability to explain why this pattern and who is behind this. What is the system that is kind of generating this kind of a line, sort of a falsehood in certain pattern is not explained, and the rationale is not discussed. Maybe it's not the mandate of fact-checking organization, but I think it can still be considered as either weakness or a challenge. And the other part is that, of course, the damage is minimized in certain extent. During the pandemic, we've seen like range of false information being promoted, and in a day or two or three or week, we've seen corrections were made. However, the ability to control the damage by the fact-checking entities are certainly limited because of the nature of operation. And I spoke to a couple of local fact-checking entities and spent quite a bit of time talking to them on their operations. And one of the challenges that they personally experience is that an issue of a trust. For example, I spoke to one of the fact-checking entities yesterday, and they were saying, like, you know, after Russian invasion, certain clarifications was verified, and they are sort of labeled as politically motivated verifications. And when some content that are associated with certain political parties are verified, those attempts are being easily labeled as political attempt. So maybe this should be studied to some extent further. And when it comes to the time factor, almost every fact-checking entity said it would usually in most of the time it would take at least 2 days for them to clarify certain informations, if that is to do with government entities or private corporate companies or individuals that are involved in politics and some other cases. It is because of that, the ability of fact-checking organizations to sort of provide instant services is to some extent limited as well. And the other problem that was discussed during our deliberation was that lack of proactive disclosure from the public institutions within the local governance, and then also clarifying information from government sources sometime is challenging. And we spoke about the government fact-checking. I'm just passing it over. In addition to that, there are several micro-level challenges as well. And again, for the best interest of the time, I'm not going to focus too much on that. Some of the micro-level challenges are like human resource, financial, lack of networking, lack of news literacy, as we discussed in our previous presentations, were found. Finally, fact-checking is an effective way to create culture of critical thinking, but it is not the only solution for the increasing information falsehood that we are all experiencing. Once again, thank you so very much for providing this opportunity.
Thank you so much, Dr. Raghuram and Dr. Rasmin. So we are having so much of technical issues today with the electricity cut, I think, everywhere in the country. But we have to face this kind of situation. So at the end of the presentations, I think we had a very successful day of our webinar. It was 5 presentations on 4 topics we had during this webinar session. And I'm sure the audience has questions, comments, clarifications. So, of course, during the presentation time also, I mentioned that if they have any questions, comments, clarifications to forward it to the chat box. But so far, we haven't received any. And so this is the time for the questions, clarifications, and comments. The floor is open for the audience.
Good afternoon. I'm Madhubhashini Galagadarake. I hope I'm audible to everyone. Am I audible to? Okay, thank you. Yeah. First of all, I would like to thank Sri Palee Campus and Communication University in China for organizing this webinar session. And thank you for all the presenters for your informative and useful speeches. Before I have 2 questions. Before asking the questions, I thought of thanking to Dr. Raghuram and Dr. Razin for giving a clear idea of the new and social media environment in Sri Lanka to the audience. My first question is to Dr. Kalinga Senaviratna. My question is now due to the development of the new technology, any citizen can become a journalist. This ensures the great concept of freedom of expression, publication, etc. Since anyone can become a journalist in this information age, due to the new trends occurred, fake news can be created and shared on free media. As you correctly highlighted in your speech, the social media companies have the authority to control the information circulation on social media. As far as I understand, there should be an unity among Asian countries to face to this monopoly of social media ownership. So I thought of asking you whether is there a solution or a way out to protect us in this information party as developing countries, which always depend on developed nations, even when it's come to world information flow. This is the first question. I will just ask the next question as well. Maybe the professors attached to the Communication University and Dr. Kaling and other Dr. Raghuram and the presenters can answer to this particular question. Now, in this context, the media literacy and information literacy are very important in educating journalists as well as general public to understand and evaluate the media content critically. As I know, in Australia and Finland, information literacy and communication skills subject are taught in secondary education. Now, it is important to offer these subjects rather than just teaching theories and concepts in the school level, school education. So I would like to know the media literacy level and education in Australia and China in secondary education from our speakers. Thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to ask these questions. Thank you.
Over to you, Dr. Kalinga.
I think you're unmuted,
not audible.
Doctor.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes. Thank you.
Sorry, the first question was about, can you repeat it?
Yeah, of course. Actually, I was just telling, of course, now due to the development of the new technologies, anyone can become
okay,
a journalist.
Okay, yeah, I got it now. Yeah, you were asking about the control big tech have like Facebook, Twitter, and others on, basically they have become censors. And that's a big worry. Like I quoted Maria Ressa from the Philippines, who raised this in her Nobel Peace Prize address. And this is because those algorithms they use are secret, like the Coca-Cola formula. We don't know how it works. And we talk about media freedom. We criticize governments for censoring. At least the governments are elected by the people in most countries. These big tech companies are accountable for only a handful of people or sometimes only for themselves. Now, I can remember being in discussions in India where it was raised at one of the forums that we criticized, the West criticized China when Facebook was banned. And I think China also banned Twitter, if I know correctly. But by banning Facebook, China developed its own Facebook, Weibo, I think it's called. And I've had Chinese students in my classes in Singapore and Thailand. And they used to do some interesting assignments about the freedom of expression available in Weibo in the Chinese language. And we don't know it because we don't understand language and we can't research it. So in India, they were raising the issue that India, it's a national security issue for India. The Facebook's information is been controlled by US. US has got the information on millions of Indian citizens, and it's a national security issue which China has solved by not allowing Facebook in. And India has the IT technology. They provide, ironically, they provide the expertise to Silicon Valley, but they haven't been able to establish their own. So then it comes to the question whether democracy is a problem here. Too much democracy could be a problem. So it is I find it as really a very serious issue of these big tech companies being able to control the agenda. And we have got so used to using their platforms when you talk about social media, most of the social media use their platforms. And they are being censored as well, not necessarily by governments. And then the governments are also getting into that by censoring social media platforms themselves. Like for Singapore had recently introduced a new law, which is going to be followed by many other countries in the region. So I don't know the solution for it. I don't know if others have, maybe from China, if you can say whether you have the solution for it.
Thank you, Dr. Kalinga, for giving an answer with all these international experiences. Yeah, I'm glad to see you here today because I met you 10 years ago when I was doing my PhD abroad. You may remember. Thank you.
Okay, any more questions, please?
Can I to make up some other answers from Chinese perspective?
Yes.
Yes. I think just now we are talking about the civil journalism issues, and it's quite common around the world. And of course, most of the country in the world, you follow the free media system, which means people enjoy too much democracy, and at the same time they complain about the disinformation or fake news online. So what happened in China is you mentioned about the media education in China. Actually, media education in China was introduced around 20 years, but unfortunately, it is not formally integrated in the secondary school and even in high school, like what has been done in Australia or in UK or in Canada. I know in those countries, like even in most of the European countries, media education or media literacy has been legally implemented in the formal education in one way or another. But in China, not the same. But I know, according to my study, I know some of the secondary schools, especially in big cities, they offer the optional courses in the secondary or high level or high schools. So this is what happened in China. But as to the challenges of the civil journalism, what happened in China about the online content is we do have a very comprehensive approach for content regulation, or I don't like to use the word censorship, but I like regulation. So which means the government take a very, very important role to control the media content and to check the fact. I don't know whether in China we have some private, companies, they are doing fact check, business or issues. But at least in China, I know most of the government official media, they take this position to do the fact check. And even the fact checking, fact checking practice, it's a very attractive and attract a lot of readers or viewers. For those, bring a large number of readers or viewers to the media, government media. So this is a very interesting. And also, I think if you're interested, maybe in the future we can have other, conferences about the media content control. I believe China, we can offer a lot of good experiences. Of course, what can I say? We do have some people, they feel they complain about the government checking, but generally I think the media environment is quite safe compared with the other countries, such as pornography and those against national security information, or those unhealthy information, even the disinformation or malinformation. could be filtered largely by the government. So that is, I agree with Rasmin, and you mentioned about that fact checking itself is not enough. We need to know, at the same time, we need to educate the people. But even even you educate the people about media and information literacy, that's not enough. So we need the government do something. So which means media literacy, media regulation should go hands by hands. Otherwise, you simply move the burden to the media users or media consumers. That's unfair, because we still need someone to protect the citizens. So that is my point. Even I do media literacy research, I don't think the media consumers or users, they should take the whole responsibility. The government should do something. Otherwise, those kind of fact-checking issues or misinformation issues cannot be solved. Okay, that's my contribution. Thank you.
Dr. Ranjan, can I add something to the same conversation?
Yes, Rashmin, Dr. Rashmin, yes.
Looking into sort of approaching this problem, Madhubhashini's question from a very narrowed Sri Lankan perspective. I don't know, Dr. Kalinga can sort of explain this much better because he has been studying Sri Lankan media for quite a long time. At least if we take late 80s or late 70s as a first milestone, where we sort of started getting international assistance for media development. A lot of international organizations. I counted last week more than 30 to 35 international organizations from West to, South Asian and almost every part of the countries have been investing millions of dollars in Sri Lanka's media development on various areas in terms of exchanges, media development, community radios and training, forming institutions, supporting academic organizations, and also to some extent supporting regulatory bodies. All these assistance have been channeled in terms of capacitating media. In other words, to sort of strengthen the supply side for the last 30, 40 years. And I think this is the time. We have 5,000 journalists, according to certain statistics. Now, if we count the members of various regional media associations based in almost in every part of the country, every district. In some district, there are 2-3 media associations of journalists. Right. So 5,000 journalists. I think this is the time for us to empower the demand side. And one thing that I'm also observing while working with a couple of universities teaching media literacy, I think the heavy focus is given to understand what is media literacy. But I also believe like there should also be a careful shift in terms of providing skills. What students knows about news doesn't matter if they cannot sort of practically do that. I mean, practically making their hands skillful in terms of verifying various kinds of fake information. And I just ran through some random tests by a group of undergraduates to see whether they are aware of certain verification tools to clarify claims and image searching and verifying certain images that are taken of metadata and then video contents. I mean, I see a lot of skills gap. So that is an area I would assume maybe we could all sort of consider in the future if we are to address Madhubhashini's question at least in a couple of decades. Thank you.
Yeah, maybe Rasmin, you mentioned about these media workshops, and huge money Western donor agencies spend. And I have seen it myself over the last 2 to 3 decades, especially when I was working at AMIC and even after that. Now I can remember once when I was at AMIC, we wanted to set up a community alternative media portal, and we needed letters of support by UNESCO commissions, at least in 2 Asian countries, to set this up to get the funds from UNESCO. When I asked the UNESCO National Commission chair in Sri Lanka for a letter of support, he said, how can I go and ask the minister to sign the letter to support dissident media of opposition? And the same was when I asked the Singapore National Commission, actually the words he used was, he said to me, oh, the minister will piss on his pants if I ask him to sign this in support of alternative media. Now that I think is also a problem, because all this community media, especially community radio, has been set up through European funding, using this watchdog principle of the media. So naturally, the community media has become the opposition, voices of dissent. And when I was at AMIC, just before I left, I had a chat to UNESCO regional, the regional advice in Bangkok to set up a community radio research project to look at how we can set up community radio in Asia at very grassroots levels, like at local council levels, where we can train communicators, radio journalists, radio broadcasters to work with local councils and local political setup to promote good governance and also to address corruption at that level, not at national level. Now, I can remember one of my Chinese students doing a assignment for me about a similar project in China when Xi Jinping's anti-corruption drive started, how some of this corruption at very grassroots level was exposed by this social media. So when I read that, when I went through that assignment, I thought, well, this could be a better model than the model which has been promoted to us by the West, which is creating conflict at local level. So there may be, I couldn't convince the UNESCO to fund a project for us, because I want to do some research in countries where they have already established community radio through UNESCO funding, and most of the funding came from Danida from Denmark, to see whether we can find a better way of community radio promoting good governance in collaboration with local government rather than opposing them and being in conflict. And that is also a problem we find now. Dr. Sudat is very familiar with this project because he was also part of it when we got some UNESCO funding, and I was at Lankan University then in 2017. We had this project called Mindful Communication for ASEAN Integration. And it was, we brought in philosophical ideas from Asia, from a lot of it from Buddhism, as also some from Confucianism, and developed curriculum to train Asian journalists. And we keep on arguing that the Western model of journalism we have been promoting and training people creates a very adversarial culture, a journalism culture. And we can see how the COVID through creating fear in the community. And we have developed curriculum, and we have been trying to introduce it to universities. And I think Sri Palee is considering curriculum we have put together to introduce there. What I find is Asian academics are very reluctant to take these ideas on board, because most of them have been educated, got their PhDs in Western countries or Australia, and they are not willing to take up this idea. So I have been saying that we first need to decolonize the minds of Asian scholars before we could introduce this type of ideas. To what we are saying is this mindful communication ideas. We are even not saying we are training journalists. because this name journalist has been tainted with this adversarial culture, voices of dissent type of culture. So we are saying we are training communicators to promote harmony in society, and also to not to promote conflict. And sometimes I have been accused that we are trying to promote a Chinese model of communication, government control communication. So this is a challenge we are facing in Asia at the moment.
Thank you very much, Dr. Kainga. I think we are very much behind the schedule time, and but for last question, 1 or 2 questions.
Can I ask one question, sir? Is there enough time to ask? Thank you so much, Sri Palee campus, for organizing this international webinar. As a PhD scholar from the Communication University of China, I'm really happy to see my 2 professors, Professor G and Professor Yanji, today in this international webinar. I just want to ask one question from Professor G. Professor G, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Please go ahead.
I just want to ask something that that we all know that in world, like, there are 2 main dominancy of new media, especially that we all get to know the information from the Western media. But as I was being in China, I know that there is a huge new media culture as well. I mean, the social media, which is, as previous speakers also spoke, that there are Chinese dominancy media, which is banned, like Facebook and all banned, and they have Weibo, Weixin, QQ, Youku, all these things. So I just want to ask whether that Asian perspective, as China is one of a big pillar in Asia, that is there any particular way that they can internationalize those things or come up with their own perspective, because we can't access to any Chinese media or get any news from them, like because of the language and the as it is covered from the country's content policies and all. So I just want to know, is there any research going on to come up with their new ideas or come up with their own viewpoints to the world? Because it's hidden inside China. That's what I always feel. Whatever their perspective or everything, it's basically hidden inside because we can't get it out. So is there any way that it is coming up in future to reach the Asian perspective or something?
Okay. Thank you so much. I will respond very briefly. I think that the question is very connected with the previous discussions among all our participants. To be honest, from my point of view, I think the Chinese experiences, no matter it's Asian or China specific, is not entirely or 100% invisible, okay, in the scholarship. If you go through the English publications, we do have a lot of publications from inside of China or even from outside of China by overseas Chinese scholars and even European American scholars. They work on to theorize the Chinese kind of media systems. But the point I want to make before we go, I think, is sometimes, as Professor Kallinger said, I think we have to go through this process instead of setting up some new agendas for communication research for the Asian countries. That the step is, as you said, the kind of decolonization or de-Westernization of the concept that we are using. For example, journalists. When we talk about journalists, it seems like this concept should be based on kind of independence or autonomous position, especially in a very typical, no matter it's really real ideal or just a model. So I think we have to put a lot of attention onto, to the very concrete practices to make sense of those practices. For example, in China, I think my colleague, Professor Zhang, is a very renowned professor in media literacy studies in China. I also did my master's degree thesis on the media literacy discourse in China. I know actually even in the West, there's a transformation of the media discourse over the academic discourse over media literacy from a very elitist perspective, especially in the UK, to kind of to resist the rise of the popular discourse, and then to the empowerment of the public to resist the commercial power or the black box within the modern mass communication industry. I think in China we have a quite different kind of system, especially in China. I have my class to foreign students to explain how the Chinese media system is different, but not only different, but makes sense for the Chinese people. Because after almost 100 years of kind of media practices or media transformation in China, we have this kind of practical, very solid practical foundation to understand the Chinese media system from both top down and bottom up. They are not really separated. In China, we have a very political oriented kind of rhetoric or discourse to describe the role of the media. That is from the mass and to the mass. The media is never separated from the people. So we have to, in a way, to separate this kind of prevailing Western model of defining media in a democratic society in a Western sense, and from the very diverse and very concrete daily journalistic practices in non-Western countries. I think in this case, it's not our responsibility to further tell a Chinese academic story about media system here, but try to draw attention from the global scholarship to think about whether the Chinese media system or the Chinese media, practices matters also for them. So this is what I said in my presentation. The Asian perspective is not a self-expression of ourselves, but also a reflection to the dominating communication and media theoretical paradigms, which is originally from the Western countries. So I think we have a long way to go. I hope I make myself clear. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Professor G.
Thank you very much. And so if one last chance for anyone.
Okay. Professor Zhang. Professor Zhang. Professor Zhang, actually, may I ask a question, please? I just wanted to ask briefly. Can you explain as to how the e-governance, the systems are being used in a Chinese context? In a point form. Very briefly. It's not. I'm not asking for a descriptive. Something, Professor. I just wanted as to what the Chinese do with e-governance, because in a way, when we consider the e-governance in certain countries, actually we see the e-governance is being used. Actually, those mechanisms are not being very well, sort of merged with the real need requirement. So then, how do the Chinese use e-governance? Professor.
Yes, thank you very much, Nadira. And e-governance closely connected with the digital literacy. And I think for those, not only Westerners, but also, our Asian friends know very little about what's going on in China. So just now when we discussed, I'm thinking about we might have a conference about things entitled like things you don't know about Chinese media system. So there are a lot of secrets I like to share with you. I think so many people, when they talk about Chinese media or Chinese new media, they just think about censorship, government control, state control, or government-led. No more than that. But actually what happened in China is people really, really enjoy the new media, the digital media, like you enjoy the Facebook and Twitter and, Instagram. As to the, e-governance, it is highly, highly promoted by the government itself. For the e-governance, there are several periods. And, at the first period, it's about you move a lot. It's just like a one-way communication, which means the government, they have the government, institution, they have a website, and they issue information, then they just, issue information. But later on, it's more like they provide a lot of, civil servants on the on the media, on the website, like apply visa or receive any kind of service. But what happened in China, we are moving more than that. For example, we use a lot of big data technology to help the transportation, to help the healthcare issues. Like in China, we are very successfully fighting against the COVID-19. I believe we are very successfully. That's why all of us in our mobile phone, and we have a app, and we use the app we show the app. It is called a house code. Then we use that everywhere we go. So it's very easy for the government to know the information about each one. So whenever there's one cases about the COVID-19, so it's very easily to find out who is around, who visited this place or not. So this is another case. But what happened in China is, I know a lot of people feel pity about Chinese people for we cannot use Facebook or Twitter. But actually in China, we have a TikTok and we have Weibo, and that is equivalent, Twitter. But also we have a WeChat. So WeChat is not like a Facebook, not like Twitter. On the WeChat, there are so many services. Almost I do everything online, which means nowadays we don't carry any cash in China. Almost no cash was used in China. So China is a cashless society, which means we do the e-pay online, and the government work with the private companies like Alibaba to do the e-pay. So everywhere we go, we just take a mobile phone and we receive a lot of service, like we pay tax, we book tickets, we book, we almost do everything. We receive most of the government information and the service from the WeChat. So, which means the government not only they deeply, closely work with the private companies to do the, e-governance. So the e-governance now is almost everywhere, and due to the high penetration of the internet, so you think about the other countries. You have a Facebook, you have a Twitter, but the government cannot trust Facebook or Twitter to do those kind of e-service or government service. So I think Chinese people benefit from the so-called, government-controlled media system, and without Facebook, without Twitter, we can enjoy very safe, e-government or e-service in China. So I really think there are a lot of things unknown from the outside about what's going on in China, about the media system, about the e-governance. And thank you very much, Nadir.
Thank you so much, Professor. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. I think it's time for us to wind up the session. And I think we are very much behind the schedule also. And it was a very productive day from the very beginning, starting from Dr. Kalinga Seneviratne. So we all of the audience, I think, including ourselves, were very much acknowledged with the most modern technological aspect of media literacy, as well as the media behavior and how it affects to Facebook, the society and the Western influence, and how they make the world upside down with fake news and so on. And of course, when one was awarded with the Nobel Prize, that the one is in the prison. So how the of course the media and with the media activation, and how the people in the Western and of course in the global powers, how they of course act, and how they face this situation, and how they react to what is coming up as reality. And then of course it was from the two professors from China. So of course for a shared future, our shared future, and common culture, how we can go ahead with the research approach, and how we can develop researchers to have a shared and the shared future. And also, what he mainly focus was on particular, especially in of course Asian countries like us, the basic knowledge was basically based on idealism, innovation aspects, and of course that was the base that of course the Western took at that time. And so the basic foundation of knowledge is of course from Asia, and therefore I think we can develop that, and we can have that particular knowledge base again, and develop from Asia perspectives, as from Dr. Kalinga from the first speech, of course, talk, but emphasis was of course why can't we have our own journalism, our own communication system theories, and so on. Of course, there is a much possibility, and we are so developed. One issue raised by Dr. Kaling was also like the two powers in the Asian region, India and China. So at the very beginning of his speech, I saw that why not we come to a compromise and be like brothers and colleagues in the region, and to make ourselves so strong that nobody from Western or from other world cannot approach. Of course, nobody can approach us and divide our neighbors and make us be together. So, and of course, the professor regarding media literacy, we have to make the literacy. Otherwise, what is happening in this today, in the today's context, the contemporary society, what we read, of course, even today, what is happening in Soviet Russia, Ukraine. So they are fabricating a new story, and what is really happening is, of course, misinterpreted, and misinformation is so much influencing the whole society. And we could see how it happened in 1992 when Iraq was invaded by USA. So it was not an invasion. What is happening at the moment is kind of an invasion. So this is how they fabricated the whole story in the global arena. And so I think literacy point of view, we have to have the knowledge creation mechanism in Asian context. And of course, when we talk on the media research culture, new dimensions, how we can, of course, as very correctly mentioned by the professor, so it is, we have to go with equity and with friendship with everybody here, and we don't want to dominate anybody. But we have to, what we have to share, everyone can global culture, and at the end of to live to everybody to live in this world peacefully. So I think so today's the whole discussion, the whole webinar was very much focused on various aspects of media literacy, technological aspect, modern aspect, and the influential, the global impact of media behavior, and everything. On the whole, we had a long and productive session, so we can be very happy, and we should be very much thankful to all the presenters, all the panelists, and who I'm very sure with their very busy schedule, so they attended to this webinar, of course, hosted by Sri Palee campus, as well as the Chinese University, and Professor doctors from Jaffna University, and Dr. Kalinga. And I think so you all contributed much for the development of development aspect of media literacy. So that will be a very good new avenue for all of us to go forward and think, and therefore, with that remarks, thanking all of you, I hand over to Dr. Sugat Senarath, who is the coordinator of this webinar. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Ranjan Hettiarachchi. Dear Vice Chancellor, Rector, Sri Palee Campus, professors, Head of the Department, academics, students, ladies and gentlemen. I am very happy to mention you that Senior Professor Chandrika Vijayaratna, Vice Chancellor, University of Colombo, always be with us. Thank you, Madam, for your encouragement, guidance, and helping hand the success of this webinar session. I am also very thankful all the campus board members of Sri Palee Campus and all the official, not only University of Colombo, but also other universities who participated in this webinar and encouraging us. I must convey my sincere thanks to Dr. Pratibha Mahanama, Rector of Sri Palee Campus, for his consultation and guidance to make this international webinar session success. He's playing the key role of the current development of Sri Palee Campus. I would like to thank Mr. Nadira Sri Ekanayaka for his contribution for the success of this webinar session. He has been with us all the time by coordinating this event. I also extend my sincere thanks to Professor Chan In-Chu, Deputy Dean, Institute for a Community with a Shared Future, Communication University of China, and Professor G. Terchin, the Vice Dean, Institute for a Community with a Shared Future of Communication University of China. Dear professors, we hope that this is the first step of our academic cooperation and it would lead to strengthen the relationship between Sri Palee Campus and Communication University in China. I would like to thank Dr. Kalinga Seniviratna, former head, AMIC Singapore, well-known author and international communication analyst. Even though now he is in Australia with his academic assignment, he dedicated his valuable time with us. He has been helping us for years for the research development. Thank you, Dr. Kalinga Seniviratna, for being with us. My thanks also goes to Dr. S. Raghuram, head of the Department of Media Studies, Jaffna University, and Dr. M.C. Rasmin, the Foundation for Advanced Critical Thinking in South Asia. We are very thankful Professor Ranjan Hettiarachchi for his contribution of moderating this webinar session. While being on sabbatical leave at Trincomalee campus, he is participating in this webinar session. I also remember Dr. Kumuduni Madhumage, head of the Department of Mass Media, Dr. Tudor Veerasinghe, Professor Dharmakirti Ranjan, Mrs. Kalani Dharmasiri, Mr. Dilan Darshana, Ms. Sajita Lakmali, Mrs. Nayana Suravira, Ms. Anusha Shivalingam, Mr. Amila Pereira, Mrs. Pradeepa Disanayaka, and Ms. Nirosha Disanayaka for their dedication to make this event success. I also would like to convey my thanks to the Department of Computer Studies, Mr. Bhagesri Fonseca, the head of the department, Mrs. Tisarani Kaluarachi, and Mr. Rajesh Hettiarachchi for giving us technical support. Mrs. Chaturika Nimala Chandra, head of the Department of Performing Arts, and its academic staff, Dr. Jayanta Vani Singh, head of the Department of Languages, and its academic staff for their encouragement, and University, Open University of Sri Lanka, and University of Jaffna. I would like to thank all the non-academic staff of Sri Palee campus for their contribution to make this event success. It is no doubt without your participation, this webinar session would have been meaningless. You have dedicated your precious time by participating in this academic session with great interest. I would like to thank all of the member of audience who participated in this event and make this session fruitful. I also apologize if I have missed anyone from the list of vote of thanks by mistake. Thank you all.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We are really Asian country. We share a lot of cultures. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Nadira.
Thank you, Professor. Thank you so much, Professor. Thank you, Professor G.
Thank you, Professor Ranjim, for your chair. Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you so much. And this is not the end. So this is start of the long journey. So we'll please keep in touch and we'll have a shared academic programs in the future. Thank you so much.
Sure. Yes, I have some proposals by working with your university, and later on we might meet, to discuss those issues. And this is a very good beginning for us as well. Okay, you all take care.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for
Thank
participation.
you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Once again, thank you, Shugath. Thank you.
Sri